Oh, yeah, take the chair. Take the chair. I always listen. Where's it now?
Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to go ahead and get started here. I'm going to call the Board of Selectmen to order for the special joint meeting with the Board of Finance for Tuesday, February 6, 2024. The time is now 7:01 p.m.
And I would like to call the Board of Finance special meeting for February 6th to order also. And please join us for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so it looks like first up, now I guess as we go through this, okay, so it's account number 10330, registrar of voters. Tim and Wendy here. Tim and Wendy. Good evening.
All right, good evening. So each year the registrar of voters budget for 3 election events: 1 primary, 1 general election, and 1 budget referendum. In fiscal year 22, we ended up with a $14,283 surplus because that year there was no municipal primary, so we had leftover funds. For 2023, although we budgeted for 3 election events, we ended up having 7 election events. In July, we had the firing range referendum. In August, the state primary. In November, the general election. In December, the water plant referendum. In January, the HVAC high school referendum. In February, we had a special election, and then in April, we had a budget referendum. And since we'd only budgeted for 3 events, we ended up overrunning our budget by $25,758. For 2024, we budgeted actually for 4 election events: the municipal primary, the the municipal election, the budget referendum, and then on April 2nd, we're going to have a presidential primary. So we had accounted for that. What we didn't account for, and we had kind of warned you at the time we presented the current year's budget, was that early voting was coming. We just didn't know what it was going to look like and what we were going to be required to do. The state has given us a grant to cover the early voting for the presidential primary, so that's going to be fine because that's still the same fiscal year. And so we don't anticipate overrunning our budget at all this year. For what's in front of you is the request for fiscal year 2025, and we're requesting $156,275, and that's budgeting for 1 state and federal primary, which would take place in August, and that would include 7 days of early voting, then 1 presidential election with 14 days of early voting, and then 1 budget referendum. And fortunately, early voting doesn't apply to the budget referendums. The presidential election alone, we usually get I think last time, an 86% voter turnout. So that would have demanded an increase in the budget anyway. But the early voting overall, we have an increase of $43,000 in the request. And of that, about $31,000 is early voting. And looking specifically at the election expense, we're requesting $90,670 for election expenses, and that covers both election and early voting. And overall, it's a $37,700 increase in election expense line item alone. And again, as I said, that includes early voting, and early voting comprises $31,440 of that. For office expenses, relatively small. It's $8,630 for office expenses, and that's the usual office supplies, postage, registrar training, mileage, and the Registrar of Voters Association. This is an increase over last year, and a big part of it is postage. Our postage has gone up, and we felt it this year. And our annual canvas is where we're sending out letters to all of our voters. In addition, we send out letters to everyone who registers to vote or changes their registration. But after presidential elections, we send out a letter, a canvas letter, to every single person who did not vote to find out, do you still live here in town? You know, what's happening? Because if you don't vote in a presidential election, we suspect that maybe you don't live here at all. But have a lot of people respond and say, no, we're not still here. Anyway. And finally, section 10.9 of the charter directs the Board of Finance to set the annual salaries of the registrars. And for fiscal 2025, we're asking for $1,000 increase to each registrar's salary. That would bring us up to $22,000 a year. And I don't know if you have anything to add, Wendy, or if anyone has any questions.
What did 2021 look like as a presidential year? Because you're not anticipating any additional, and you're not anticipating any additional referendums for 25 or, you know, but like, what did 21 was our last presidential election.
And that
No,
was
2020.
2020.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Did you vote then?
I did.
I voted
I
in
voted
2020.
Sorry.
Right?
Oh, and then 2020 was shut down, so it was, no, I meant financially, like budget wise.
Oh,
We couldn't have really compared it because it was,
Right, well, budget wise, that year, I think we spent 24,000 on the presidential election,
right,
and that's without early voting.
right, and so now yeah, that's all I
And
was.
2020 was just a weird,
Oh,
we
weird
had
number.
so many people voting by absentee. We had 4,400 absentee ballots. Now, the heavy lifting on that goes to the town clerk. We just have to count them, and that's the tough one. But yeah, we had 4,400 people, but we ended up having an army of people to process those absentee ballots. A normal absentee ballot in a presidential year might be 400. So we had about 10-fold increase.
And that labor is in the town clerk's budget, isn't it?
No, the counting is in our budget. The labor for accepting the applications and issuing the ballots is with the town clerk.
We combine our election expense. I cover the expense of the ballots. And then they cover the other part of it.
The day-to-day ballots.
Right,
as they're
and I
coming in your
will back
office.
them up on saying that as part of the loop with the Secretary of State, their workload coming up is astronomical. And for part-time registrars, I will say that there's gonna be a lot more required of them than in the past. So I told you, Tim, I would give you.
Yeah, no, we saw that here. Thank you.
No, seriously,
No, no,
I'm
of course.
dead serious about it.
No, they do a lot of work.
It's worth mentioning, with respect to the presidential race, not the primary, there's 14 days of early voting. Likely that we'll need 2 locations for that. I mean, I know we're talking
Early
about
voting?
early voting on
We're-
either way.
Well, let's see how we get through this and we get through the state primary, but our anticipation is no, let's just keep it one spot. And it's so much better to have it here. Because if someone comes in, especially for a primary, someone comes in, they insist that they are affiliated and they're not in the book. And we can just walk down the hall with them to our paper files, pull out their card, and then they can see the card that they filled out and they signed and said they wanted to be unaffiliated. But if you have a second location up at Stony Hill, you can't really have that same experience.
Can't really connect into CPRS.
Yeah, we
I
have
mean, there's
to,
a lot of complications when it's off-site.
yeah, Nick would have to somehow get us into the statewide voter registration.
Isn't it a
Online
requirement to
system.
have it at the early voting locations? You gotta have.
You have to have access to that. Yeah. So, and we still don't know exactly, I put in all your packages, our draft plan of what early voting will look like. But we still haven't received any training on it yet. And we don't know, the state says they may be getting some new tabulators. We always love testing new equipment just before a presidential election.
It'd be smart.
So,
Anybody on the Board of Finance have any questions for Wendy or Tim?
Somebody need a new toner cartridge.
Yeah, that's actually,
That costs money.
that's the central, that's the central. Oh, what is that? Did you notice that in the copier today?
What?
This dark spot down the center.
It's
I
time
did
for a
that.
new copier.
Come
on, yeah, the whole copier.
Okay,
Well,
I think I heard no more questions, so thank you. Okay. Thank you both very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you for your
Next
time.
up is the
Thanks for coming
town
on.
clerk with 10130. Account 10130.
Hi,
This is the one I've
everybody.
been
Thank you for last year's budget and the raise that you gave me, which was unexpected and appreciated. Okay, so a couple of things. Two accounts I raised were for elections expense, and again, presidential election 2020, even though it was an odd year, the presidential ballots alone, and as I mentioned when Tim was speaking, that I am responsible for the ordering and the payment of ballots, absentee ballots, the legal notices, the signage, all that. So we each take a portion, with the major portion being with the registrars. I have the back end of that. So alone with the presidential ballots alone, the cost was $11,304 just for the presidential ballots. I have to order 100% of every registered voter in the state, in the town. For 2021, the presidential primary ballots alone were $3,175. Now that's just paper ballots. That does not include the signage that we put out, sandwich boards, the legal notices. Legal notices are for everything that has to do with my office, which would be presidential primaries, state primaries, presidential election, JPs, budget referendum, my state and town wide audit that was just delivered to my office, all those legal notices. And I just did the list of town committee members, and that alone, two of those legal notices was over $600. So it's that throughout the year. So for that reason, and the election expense also, when we did the absentee ballots for the presidential election, we went from 400 to 4,000. So that increase, I was given a $15,000 grant at that time, which I used for help, which we required. I had a whole staff of people. We had a whole production line out in the hallway outside my office. We were able to whittle that down to maybe 6, but I had 12 people. I mean, it required that much. So I don't expect that with COVID being, subsided, that we're going to have the same need, but I can't anticipate or not prepare for the help with the absentee ballot. So for that reason, I upped it 5,000, 5,500 actually. Based on the cost of extra help for the last presidential election. Now, there's a good possibility I'm not going to need that money, but I'd rather budget for it and have it be a known expense and then give that money back. It's impossible for 3 of us in the office to carry on regular duties for day in, day out, and also manage a presidential election. So that's one of the things. The other thing was the contracted services. According to our first selectman, we're going to be having a charter revision this year. And for the printing for the last charter revision, it was an additional $3,000 over what I have down as the contracted services. There are a couple of points I wanted to point out. The dog account is increasing due to new legislation, so we're up 16% on that. It's a minuscule account, but every little bit helps. I also reduced the land record account, but I was also able to add a new feature, which is property check, which I don't know if any of you are aware that we put it in the News Times. It was all over the place. And people are signing up left and right for that. That cost me a total of $1,200 for the year, and that was it. I have over 150 people already signed up for it. With everything that's going on, I think that was a good investment. And with that, also that account, the land record account, my budget will come due for 25-26. So there will be an increase, but for this year, we've dropped it down because I've always come under what was budgeted for that. So we dropped it by $2,000, but be aware that in 25-26, I will have to sign a new contract. And they've already told me it's going up 5 to 10%. So and that's pretty much it. Oh, and the train is up 45% over previous year. Usage is rapidly growing, more so for the daily versus the annual, but I expect the annual to come back as well. Any questions or?
Questions from board selectmen side? Any questions on the board of finance? Yes,
Do we have the revenue numbers?
No, so we can get the revenue we will do when we start getting down into the deliberations. We're still putting all the revenue information together.
Sure, I just was noticing that. You said mentioned a couple. I was looking to see.
Yeah, no, they're not in
Yeah.
there yet.
Yeah,
You
no.
will have a handout before deliberations that has all listed out.
Waiting on it.
Yeah.
The train station up, did you say up 45%?
Yeah.
Because of,
Daily parking more so than the annual. The permits we're kind of stagnant at because I think based on what's going on in the workforce, people are now going back to work more often.
yeah,
The daily spots are full almost on a daily basis. And I ran some numbers and we're up 45% over last year, but it's been a steady increase. So for 2020, we had $4,605 for the kiosk. And then it was $4,045. It actually dropped in 2021. Then we jumped up to $12,054 in 2022. And as of today, we're up to $17,405. Actually, no, I'm sorry. 2023 was $17,405, which was a 45% increase over 2022.
Just
then-
one note. So the railroad, that money stays with that parking
It
lot.
doesn't go in
So
the
it's not
general.
general fund revenue.
I know they're
Yes,
doing
yeah,
account
yeah.
that's for the state.
Yeah, but I just wanted you to know that
This is good to know.
I'm kicking.
We got a fire truck to buy. I don't know if you heard that.
Yeah, no. I mean,
Please
I
park
just
at the
want you
train
to know you're getting your money's worth out of the parking authority.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's pretty much it.
All right. John, that was the best of one tonight.
So
It's only
that's-
two.
well,
Well,
that's it.
I think it was pretty good.
She's always the
No more
best
questions,
person.
nothing?
No.
Okay.
There was some sync.
What was the $3,000 for contract services? You said it's related to the charter revision?
Yeah, so the contracted services I use to update the code book. That is also used for the printing of, I have contracts with Laserfiche, General Code. Those are, I have Onboard, which is the new boards and commissions. I don't know if you've noticed that online. That's a new system that actually tracks history. So all those contractual kind of software programs, et cetera, and services that they provide in my contracted services account come from that, from 5313. Now to print the charter revision booklets, we have to print them. They have to go to Hartford. They have to go to the Secretary of State's office. They have to go to the state library. So anytime we do a charter revision, the whole thing has to be reprinted and put into the code book. So that $3,000 was what we spent the last charter revision, which I think was 2015.
Yeah.
It was a long time ago.
It was
2015, 13, 14,
13 or
15.
14.
So that's the rate that I pulled from 2013, 2015, somewhere in there.
And if
And
the,
that's what it cost.
and if the charter revision is done by the end of June 30th, you won't have that expense in the next. fiscal year.
Exactly.
So
So
one-
depending on how fast the charter revision works to modify that. So it's really just a printing expense and an incorporation into the regular code book. Okay.
Thank you, Lisa.
Want the hot seat?
Oh, that's it.
Yeah, I see, right?
Yeah, come on.
Next up is the tax
Oh, this is
collector.
the one, John. Paul, come on, sit.
That's the one.
Yeah, 10-150.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you.
It's gonna be really, really fast, guys. I have not too many changes. Dues and education was no changes. Mileage was no changes. Biggest change was my office expense, due to the postage and my general office supplies, which is for the printing and everything, for my delinquent notices. Mainly, I have one new hire, which we have to go to classes for. I have my new hire starting classes. She's going to the first class for tax collecting. My clerk is on her third class. My assistant is, has one more class before she gets certified. And I have my recertification classes to keep up for my classes. And that's all I have. Questions?
Does anybody have anything for Paula? Paula, this is not the, yeah, I'm sorry.
Can I ask a question?
I think, yeah, I'll let you. Be quick, right, Brian?
Yeah.
I'll try and be quick.
Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, and you might have gone over this in the past, do people have the option to ask their bills be sent electronically, or is there some sort of statute where you're not allowed to do that?
We have to by law send them by mail. You can sign up online on the website through the portal to get them sign up for automatic online.
But you still have to mail a bill.
We still have to mail.
Legally.
You answered my question. Thank you.
Yes.
Best presentation so far. I just want that. I
Not-
just want that.
Yes.
30
that's what-
seconds, Lisa.
Any questions, Bob? You have something?
Wow.
I have bigger, expansive.
I'm just
What
kidding.
are you
Yours was
seeing as
wonderful.
far as collection rates? Are people paying?
I'm-
Are you seeing them in form
As
crime?
of this past month, I'm at 77.25, and last year I was at 77.998. I believe,
July 31st?
Yes,
Excuse me,
from
January
July.
31st?
From July.
Yeah,
For-
July
for the first 7
1st
months of the year.
until
Yes.
Through January 31st.
Yes,
You're at 77.
Yep.
And I'm sorry, what was the year before?
77. 77.98 was last year, 77.25 this year. So I'm a little bit down, but I'm getting there. This is the first year I'm down from the previous year.
And last year, Bob, prior year uncollected, for the full fiscal year, the number was 633,000. So far this year, we're at 360,000, so 65%. So trending wise, we're right in the same ballpark. So it seems like the people that have been paying on time, pay on time, and the prior year uncollected number seems to be trending about the same. Also.
Right.
So you don't see any kind of ticking time bomb in the economy, the job market, at least from the standpoint of.
Honestly, no. Pretty much the same. It's been pretty steady. Even, I'm getting a list, I hate to say it, for a tax sale, and I'm looking at roughly about 10 properties, maybe. And I'm like even hesitant to even do one this year.
They normally get cleaned up towards as it gets
Yeah.
to sale, right? Yeah.
Again, I'm hesitant to
Yeah.
even send them this year because I'm working with them.
Anybody else? Steve, Joe, you're all good? Okay. Oh, that was the quickest one. That was probably the best one.
So are we grading, on
Well,
quickness or?
there's a couple categories.
expansiveness?
Lisa, you did a great job. I
Thank
just
you,
want
Brian.
to
Yes.
you did a wonderful job.
Thank you.
Right.
My ego took it.
We're not playing favoritism.
Next up, we have Beth Cavagna from Planning and Zoning,
And I won't be here.
account 10250.
I like to mention, Brad, you did a great job of keeping these all in order. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's good to be heard, but, we'll go to the numbers upstairs.
I'm glad we're back to the
We're okay with that.
primitive
Yeah, we're hoping.
version.
Okay, so, instead of going through the whole thing, I'll concentrate on the two items that I'm asking for increases on. The first one is, to make the part-time zoning inspector a full-time inspector. Right now, presently, you have me as the planning and zoning official, David is the wetlands agent, and we have a secretary. we have a part-time zoning inspector who works approximately 18 hours a week. Similar to what other departments have told you, and I'm trying not to giggle too much, but because of the increase in services that are needed in the town, some of that due to development, which does come from our office. I feel that at this point, I will be retiring soon, and it's an opportunity for the office to start picking up and departmentalizing some of the services and things that I do. And a lot of that has to do with zoning enforcement. And most towns now have what they call a zoning enforcement officer who is certified by the state of Connecticut. State of Connecticut over the last couple of years has taken it upon themselves to make zoning be the all evil of the world, dealing with housing in general and affordable housing in particular. So by doing that, the state legislature has passed numerous laws dealing with land use that have affected our department and have affected the increase in services that it's cost. So therefore, that's the main reason for getting a zoning enforcement officer in here, so we can do some training in-house and give them ample opportunity, time to learn the system. Just a reminder along those same lines, we do have what we call a blight ordinance. And Mr. Carter is going to be working on that blight ordinance to make it more manageable and more enforceable. Fines, some of you have even talked about fines over the years, ordinances pertaining to fines. If you don't get a building permit, where's the fine for that? If you don't do something correctly, you start an excavation and fill, you start digging a big hole in your backyard, and you're not supposed to be doing that. What's the penalty? A fine. And so with that, anticipating that coming forward in the next couple of months, that's one of the main reasons for doing that with the zoning enforcement. Do you have any questions to ask me in regards to that?
I do with the salary.
Yes.
What-
Salary I'm not good with, but go try.
Well, I see you've requested a $40,414 change in salary. How much of that change goes to bumping the zoning officer to full-time?
So I'll take that, Brian. So in the 35 bottom section down here, Brian, currently the part-time employee, the budget for that with no change is $24,036. To go full-time, the addition would be $35,964. So 60,000. We're anticipating the position to be listed, if it's approved, at $60,000, which when we did a benchmark on it, the HR director did, is a little light. Our assumption is we probably wouldn't be able to hire somebody that had the certs. So we'd probably then have to have them go through the state program to get certified. So obviously we're not going to pay the rate of somebody that's certified right away. So the difference is the $35,964. The other part of the 40,000 is just the rest of the office staff.
And what do they get per hour now for the 18 hours?
I think it's 25.
26.
He's been here about 5 years, 5 or 6 years.
So
Let's see. 2568.
Isn't that minimum wage, man?
Close.
Yeah.
so they get 25.68 an hour at the 18 hours.
Yes.
So Beth, when's your release date? I mean, are you,
I can't tell you.
oh, you can't.
No.
We're planning higher.
Well, I have
Right,
to plan because I
everything.
won't be able to spar with you at the planning and zoning meetings. I'll have to redirect.
I can make arrangements for you to do that.
Okay. It's gonna have to change.
The second part of this is more, it involves a little bit of my personal feelings based on my history of working with the town for the last 24 years, but also being on land use commissions prior to that for 15 to 20 years. And that is dealing with engineering. I've lived through a couple of different engineers that we've had. I've lived through the combination director of public works and engineer. And I truly believe asking for an increase in the engineering department, which I despise having to do, I have to do, only because there are certain qualities that you need to have in an engineer that I have unfortunately been doing to an extent with some inspections just based on my experiences. And I think going forward with the town, it's imperative that we have someone in-house. But for the time being, I'm asking for an increase of 30,000, but I am going to take a few minutes to explain this to you. As far as having an engineer in the house, it's services that the town should be providing, not only to people that come in and want to do construction, but also people that want to come in and do construction on their homes. There's drainage issues and designs that are involved that need to be addressed, and we are outsourcing everything at this point. For example, if somebody wanted to build a single family home, the outsource cost associated with that is approximately $3,000 to $4,000. The review time it takes to get the turnaround in relation to that can go from anywhere to four weeks to 12 weeks. Now, the engineering services that we have now presently are very good, but at the same time, there is a big gap there. It is extremely difficult to have someone come in and say they want to put in a little 8x10 addition to their house. And for me, as the planner, to sit there and say, well, let me explain to you what you have to do for stormwater management. And then have to be in charge of going out to inspect it. But I do truly believe that the increase is needed for the services that we render just from a department point of view. And those are some of the things, reviewing of site plans. Large developments come in, single family homes come in, somebody wants to put an addition on the house. It all has to be covered by an engineer fee or cost associated with it. There are other aspects of civil engineering that the town needs to address, and that's covered in the engineer's budget. And that, just going through some of the lists are municipal sidewalk and stairs. We're just finishing up a mobility study. We have design plans, but we have to finalize those plans in order to use grant money that town receives from the state to implement. That is going to be outsourced. Things dealing that come up on a day-to-day basis. Train parking, train station parking in other sections of town. It really should be an engineer who is designing where those parking spaces shall go for. A lot with our streetscapes, a lot with our sidewalks. You need someone in-house. We've been dealing with a lot of rain issues. 5 to 6 inches of rain. You have people coming in and saying, my basement's flooding. It's your fault that my basement is flooding. You have an engineer on staff that can discuss with them more on a common sense level, the engineering principles of it's the rain, it's the saturation. They look at me sometimes and they say, who are you? But if you have someone with that PE behind his name, it has a little bit more effect and help to the other departments, such as Public Works and Planning and Zoning. And I'll leave it at that. But if anybody wants to discuss that further with me, you know where I am. Just please pick up the phone and call. I'd be more than happy to work with you on it, because that's one of my goals, is to make sure that we're taking care of when the time comes.
But whenever that.
If I can just ask
Yes.
about the engineer, John and I had a
Yes.
conversation about that. Isn't it the applicant's cost? Why does a taxpayer
Yeah, I
have to
was
pay
wondering
somebody
too.
to worry about their drain water? If they're making an addition on their house, why are they not hiring the engineer? Why is it on the taxpayer's back?
And then it is.
I get it if it's a sidewalk issue or, a town-owned property, it's good to have that. But there's a line in the public works that's either an engineer or whatever we're supposed to be doing. Why is it important that we're answering a person's question about they have a drain problem because they put an addition on their house?
Not that they have a drain problem when
Well,
they
you
put an
mentioned that
addition
as
on
an
their house.
example.
I'm sorry. What I'm saying is somebody wants to put an addition on their house, right?
So shouldn't they hire an engineer?
Right.
It's just,
That's what I was
if you
thinking.
want to put a little bump out on your
As I'm
house.
now I'm putting a little ADU in the back.
No, I'm just using
Yeah.
you as an example. If we have someone in-house that can explain to them the basics of engineering, do a little rain garden, what we're
But
dealing
shouldn't her
with,
project
but what
pay for
we are
that?
dealing
I
with is a mandate from the state level. It's called MS4. So now
Sounds like a
everybody, MS4,
Sounds like a gang.
Kind of.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
little- that
but
big-
it is,
Cut you.
it's
Got
a
arrested.
mandated stormwater management plan that we have to abide by. We have to make sure everybody that works in the door abides by.
I do have a question to follow up on John.
But I don't want
There's
to,
a-
oh, well, let me finish what I was
Okay.
saying.
Okay.
What I was saying was, I don't want to have Cynthia McCorkadale want to do a little bump out on her house so she could put a closet in, and I'm sorry to use you as an
That's a big
example.
closet.
And that she is gonna have to go out and hire an engineer because she's gonna create an increase in her impervious area.
Why should I pay?
Right, but I would think that I would pay
It's
for
a
it, and then an
service.
inspector would come out. Well, it's a service,
It's a service that the town should
but
provide.
not everybody.
Well, everybody
puts
doesn't
on
get,
bump outs
everybody's
on there.
not doing a bump out.
Yeah.
It's a service plowing our roads and our fire department. I'm not sure why we're paying.
Okay.
Well,
All right,
yeah,
in
but
there are
in fairness to
fees.
Beth,
Hold on,
like,
hold on.
when we do a new construction,
Part of your application.
tremendous amount of engineering fees. However, they have to pay for my plans to go to Wright Pierce sometimes,
Yes,
who reviews my plans, asks questions. It gets sent back to me. I send the questions to my engineer. My engineer answers the questions, and after 10 volleys, basically both engineers are satisfied.
You say sometimes.
so,
I understand. I think I
Some,
understand now.
so I don't believe you guys send every plan for review,
no, we don't.
only mine. Let's just be clear, I've never gotten one through without review. But honestly,
You're paying for that service in your permit fee, right?
I
Correct.
don't pay
And
for
that's
the
where I was
review.
gonna go.
I don't
That's
pay
where I'm
that.
leaving
Yeah,
it.
That's
No, I'm just saying though, there's
I
more
understand
to
what you're
the
talking about.
contracted
Absolutely.
services. It goes to other reviews.
So we will talk more about the contracted services when Public Works comes up, because they do to some degree share engineering costs.
Yes, we do.
And we have made some, I mean, honest, like straightforward decisions about what we're deciding to do with engineers right now. And we'll certainly talk about that as we deliberate. Okay.
Mary.
Just had a question why she was here.
Okay, I mean, keep asking questions.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
Does anybody have any other questions?
I have a quick question. Can you charge a fee for an engineer to review your plans? Like
What we do is, that's a good question. What we do with larger projects, somebody comes in and they want to, do a development somewheres, a large project, a large addition, things of that nature. We do have a regulation that allows us to what we call for a peer review. If we need a specialized services, like a traffic engineer, someone to look at that type of thing, there is a cost, and the applicant is in charge of paying that. There's a specialized engineer, environmental services, things like that. It's specialized. It's not a normal and customary thing that we would do.
And
So
then-
yes, we do a chargeback.
And can you anticipate some savings? I mean, I know your contracted services are gonna be higher, but. can
This
you-
drives me crazy.
I know, but can there be some
I
savings?
don't like this.
In the sense that it's in-house, like obviously it's gonna cost
Yes,
us
there
less
is savings.
in-house than
There's
out
two-
of. So we
there's-
have to pay it one way or
Yes,
the
I
other.
understand what you're saying. There are two savings to this. Number one is that the person is in-house.
Right.
They possibly can answer a question by walking
Provide a
across the
service,
hall,
right.
providing a service to the taxpayer. And the second thing is the money associated with it. It saves me time. I'm not sitting there for 2 weeks waiting for a return on an engineering review.
Mhm.
And I don't care who you go to, you're still gonna get that.
Right.
I'm
You're
the
almost-
middleman.
I was gonna say, you're.
See, that's the
replacing
thing.
middleman.
I am the middleman,
Right, and if you're
right?
not there,
He's the-
where's that
and-
middleman?
right?
So this
This is direct contact. It's freeing up me to do more work. It's freeing up other people to do more work. It's freeing up Eric to do more work.
And currently, we don't have an engineer in-house capable of
Right.
doing this. So if you look at the prior year, actual was $11,000. There was somebody in Public Works that was doing as much of the in-house stuff as possible. That person left. We haven't been able to replace them, so we're trying to look at how we're gonna pivot that to what the needs of the town are, because honestly,
Do you think it can be one joint position between the two or no?
if the town at some point hires a civil engineer, that kind of would have to be like its standalone department, because it would work kind of with both.
Right.
We would, but you're talking probably $130,000 in salaries plus benefits. So,
Let me ask you, I'm gonna add something.
But that's not two, I mean, if you have two part-time, I mean,
Let me add
I
something
think it was
too.
an
Part of
attempt
the,
to hire one.
part of
Oh,
the
sorry.
decision when we were looking at engineers is that what we had before was a really, really good site civil engineer. He had bridge experience. He had a lot of background. But in looking for engineers, part of the issue is that we don't always find like that unicorn. We find that there are many different kinds of engineers. So even in our charter, we have the ability to hire a firm if we wanted to provide our engineering versus have some inside. But we've talked about that. Like down the line, maybe we do a firm that gives us a less expensive option for using more people. But I think to Beth's point, the issue is we don't always have them on hand. We don't have them right away. But we also would be smart. We can't send an engineer to do everything. So we're really wrestling with that right now. Right now, we've looked at hiring for the position that would have replaced the previous engineer. And we have something who's basically been in landscape architecture and project development, has done big streetscapes, things like that, because that's where we're falling short. We're falling short getting our sidewalks done, lots of programs, things like that. So we can't afford two bodies right now. So right now we've made a conscious decision that we're going to outsource more of our engineering, which is going to be for these two departments. And then we're going to have this other person in-house work with us as much as they can on these other projects. But that's kind of where we stand, because we can't really afford both. We can't afford somebody with a PE right now. It just, look at it. I'd love to have one, but there's a couple other people I'd like to have too. And we know these are difficult budget times, but we'll get there. And, but
I was just saying, this is part of when you're
I see it
talking
as
about
the need.
departmentalizing, so because well, we don't know when, but you might,
No, I will.
you will. And that's part of it is to have them sort of be self-sufficient, because then that way you're not juggling everything and trying to be all things to all people. Is that what you're saying, really? Sort of?
So just
I
say,
know.
Transition.
Oh, it's not.
No, it's called, I'm a taxpayer in town,
Okay.
And you're
And-
doing what's best for the town.
and I'm trying to do what's best for the town.
Right, but I mean, in your absence, it will change.
It will change
The whole
when I leave,
culture
yes.
of that department will
Yes, it
change.
will.
That's what I'm getting at. and
Correct.
That you have,
won't
they
be
have
one
to be
person
more.
problem.
Right,
Right.
right. That's what I meant.
Okay,
Thank you, Bill.
okay.
Thank you.
Your urban development.
Long as one of them.
Okay, next up, building
Right for
inspector,
what it is.
Chris Baldwin,
Right.
account number 20-180. Say, Chris, how are you?
Good, how you guys doing? Try and keep it brief.
Well, they don't say that.
Just a little overview. In addition to online permitting and hiring an additional building official, what we've tried to do is improve our review process, our inspections. And we've seen an increase in being able to review different projects coming in. The department's able to handle some of the larger volume of applications and reduce the time taken to do all of this. This has led to faster turnaround times for the applications, inspections, and it's made the department a lot more efficient. Getting down to numbers, last year's fiscal year, we brought in approximately $394,000. From July 1st of this current fiscal year to now, we've brought in $330,000 already. The majority of this income has been from commercial development projects that are happening in the town, and this also includes multifamily apartment buildings that have been coming into the town too. And that has also put an increased load on the building department too. And we issue one permit, but we've got a structure with 70 apartments in it. So the department, based on the way it's staffed now, is running very, very well. And I see these improvements helping the community and helping those who are applying for these permits to get a quicker turnaround time. And then getting back to glasses on here. So we're requesting $351,382, and that's for the salaries. And then office expenses, we're keeping that flat. Dues in education, we're asking for an increase there because we have an additional inspector. And we have certifications and classes that we have to go to and pay for to keep our certification. And then a clothing allowance, a little bit more for the additional inspector. And then that's basically it, unless you have any questions.
The contracted services, it says BOS, BOF bought out lease. I should say anticipated. That one's not up till June. So I think the buyout price is less than $20,000 of that leased vehicle. The plan would be to buy that vehicle out. It's in good shape, low mileage. But when that lease is up, if the boards do buy it out, we don't need that line item anymore for the contracted services. And right now, it just makes fiscal sense to buy out these vehicles because the price of vehicles is so high.
So you're just looking for a 2.34% increase from last year.
Correct.
Thank you. And I want to congratulate you on keeping your office all the time to your word. Then you got the new person, remember? Like,
Yeah.
you just kept the office open all the time. I want to congratulate you on that.
Anybody have anything for Chris down here? All good? Okay.
All right, perfect. That was easy.
That was the shortest one.
John, what do you think? John?
Well, we'll have different awards.
I wish it was longer.
I know, right?
Make yours really long.
You're under pressure now.
I am.
Should we take a break before Mike goes?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a kicker. Ice and a kicker.
Buckle your seatbelt there.
All right, here we go. Never get better. Seventh time doing this. But my name is Megan Orth-Kazedian, for those that don't know me, and I thank you for your time that you've dedicated to affording us the opportunity to present our budgets. I know I appreciate it. You're probably looking at the percentage right now of my little budget. So I'm gonna start from the bottom. I'm not looking for any increase in eviction and storage. The NGOs are staying the same at 20,000. Bethel Emergency Fund is staying the same. Mileage expense is staying the same, and dues and education is staying the same. I am looking for an increase in the office expenses from 800 to 1,200. Mostly that's really because of toner. If you are around town during the holidays, you'll see all our giving trees, and that's my biggest office expense is the toner. And aside from that, salaries, I have Mary O'Leary who's back there. She is the best thing that ever happened to me. She's the most wonderful, and I really feel like my hair is falling out sometimes. I have 275 hours of assistance. My department, as you'll notice, I nickel and dime myself. It's really manpower in my department. We have established great relationships with community members. They happen to love us. We love them. And we get pretty much everything we need from the community. And that's why the emergency fund has not changed. If anything, it's decreased from the last 7 years. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for 20,000 in assistant hours, $20,000 in assistant hours. I'm not looking for a part-time position, although it could be equal to a part-time position at $20 an hour. But I'm looking for more hours with Mary and more assistance too during the really busy times. We need help because it's a lot. We definitely have had an uptake in the margins of the populations. There's not just more traffic during, when we see these rentals, we do see a lot more people ourselves in the department that need help. That also includes home visits. And I do not do home visits independently, so I do rely on somebody to go with me. Mary's so professional. She has so much experience. So those hours would also be utilized, not just to do the fun things, but to do the serious things as well. We have seen, sorry, starting to melt. We have seen a huge increase. So our biggest program that we have, luckily it's run by volunteers, but it's the food pantry. We have 216 households registered just this fiscal year. Last fiscal year, we had 220 registered, which was our highest. And that was even higher than during COVID when we saw our biggest increase in a quick period of time.
What did you say the number was?
216 households. This year, 48 of those households are brand new to social services this fiscal year. Last fiscal year, we saw 79 families that were completely new to social services, didn't use any resources or services from our department in the past.
The year prior, it was 29. So
That's
it's
not good
just
news.
showing you, we went from, we, 511 people comprise those households. The biggest increase that I've seen over the last 3 years are seniors. We had 85 seniors just 2 years ago utilize the food pantry. Now we have 126 just up to date for this fiscal year. People are coming to me and they're saying, Megan, I never thought I would come to this. I planned for my retirement. We cannot afford to live with the of our applied income. We need help. And usually it's like coming to me is the most difficult thing. Actually asking for help is very difficult, and then accepting that help. But just that food pantry really helps offset the cost for our residents. It saves them like $300 a month using our food pantry, which runs purely on volunteers. They've also had an increase. They were seeing about 45 households every 2 weeks. Now they have 80 people registered, 80 households registered, and they've really eliminated all non-Bethel residents with the exception of like 2 families that they still assist that don't live in Bethel.
Megan, can we just take the step by step?
Sure.
The food pantry, you're seeing the resident once a week or
It's
daily?
twice. They operate twice a month. I'm sorry, I might have said
So
a
it's
week.
every 2 weeks they're getting a
Yes.
basket, a box? or
They're getting,
a
they
donation?
go in, actually, it's a shopping experience. So they go in with their bags and they get the items they want, even paper goods and beauty products and things that are not covered. They rely on mostly donations, but I think it's like they pay 50 to 75 cents per pound for their produce as opposed to what they would pay if they bought it from, and that's through the food rescue and the Connecticut Food Bank.
I'll say one of the things that Megan has done in her time. Megan takes great advantage of any and all programs available. And I know it from finance because when I started, we used to be cutting checks to Eversource for residents all the time. Like partial rent payments to people. And when Megan came on board, she stopped all that. She didn't stop helping people. She found programs that were available to them. So a lot of what Megan does is also just finding programs for people so that it's not necessarily
Cost to the
taxpayer directly. It's people that are volunteering their time or their money to different things, or organizations that are, but she's utilizing that. The emergency fund, the budget for that used to be $6,500. It's down to $2,000, and most years Megan doesn't use much of it. But that's just an example of what she's been doing. She utilizes those services. One year, the emergency fund, the town spent almost $12,000 out of it. So we're not really using the general fund anymore to help these people. And other than in the sense of we employ Megan, we employ Mary, we employ, so.
It's really the manpower, and thank you, Brad, for that, because I'm so nervous, but he's right. So I do take advantage of the giving fund, which is through the United Way in the newspaper. Every time I meet someone that has an extraordinary situation, I can't wait for November to come. I write down their name, their situation, and then when we are allowed to submit stories with fictitious names, I do. And this year I've submitted 9, and it came to $7,575. So far, we got $3,075 for 4 of the stories that were fully funded. Last year, all 10 stories were fully funded, and that was $6,650. So whatever their needs are, we can't give them cash per the United Way, which I agree with, but we could give them gift cards. We could pay their bill for them. So yes, in lieu of going to the emergency fund, I want people to, because they need to know what resources can help them like sustain and live an independent life. And maybe it is just getting energy assistance every year. The people that Mary and I see are wonderful families, but we see them year after year after year. Some of the people have been coming 7 years for the Christmas guests, but if that's what's helping them get through, right, and live essentially independent, aside from that, it's a great thing.
But the disturbing part of your story is the increase in the number,
Yeah.
especially seniors that have to access the services, which speaks to a larger problem.
Yes.
To affordability.
It
So,
is. It's
Yeah.
affordability, Cynthia,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
feel it when my husband feels it and we're childless. It's the cost of living
Yeah.
everywhere here in America. It is really, and I try to tell people that anyone could walk through my doors. And people do. People that work their whole entire lives that received a horrible diagnosis of cancer or a neurological disorder. One of my gals had a stroke. Her daughter had to quit her, she had to leave her job because she couldn't do it. Her daughter quit her job to take care of her mom, and now they both are without that income. So it is really helping people. And that's one of the things that I love most about my job is connecting people to resources that they otherwise wouldn't have known about. And aside from the Giving Fund, we did, well, thanks to Dan's newsletters, I'm really seeing an increase in growth in my donations this past, because he does put it in the newsletter when we're doing something. So we started this year, camp funds, and we raised $3,296 to send kids to summer camp. So through our park and rec camp, we have limitations on eligibility. So the parent has to be both parents, or if they're from a single parent, they both have to work to be considered for financial assistance. With this, they maybe don't work, but maybe their child has special needs, and that child had the opportunity to go to camp with the money that we got, and we'll definitely do that again this year. We had distributed last year $925 in gift cards. The year before $3,170, but we get so many gift cards. We had about $16,000 in monetary donations in 2023. Our programs cost, that's the Easter basket program, the holiday gift giving, and back to school. It's roughly about $30,000 a year for those programs. It's all through donations. We don't pay a penny for them. We brought our party back. We had entertainment, pizza, and all that. Bought like 1,000 raffle prizes. So the kids have fun. What we want to do is really focus on something for the people that don't have children, the middle-aged people that may not be eligible for programs with seniors. So we're working on that now. Oh, and then I'll just tell you really quick, because
She said she was nervous. Look at her rifle. on her
I mean,
head.
she-
I am nervous.
Oh, come on.
Once it gets going.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I use these statistics are based on our food pantry. So this is based on this year's 216 households that are registered for the food pantry. 169 of these households are renters. 35 of these households are homeowners. 10 are adult children residing with their parents, and 2 are homeless. That's another thing that I'm seeing an increase in too. I would say between seniors and people that either have adult children that had lived out, got married, have children, worked, and are now back at home with significant mental health issues, wreaking havoc on their senior parents' lives. And the parents just don't know what to do with the children. The police probably get called to their homes 20 times within a month. So I'm working with those families as well. And it's time consuming, but they really don't know where to turn, you know. And then some are adult children that never left the homes, but I'm not saying that's easy for the parents. It's not. But the parents that have successful children that left the home and had a family of their own and now have returned back home, that's definitely a challenge for us. And we get those referrals from everyone, from neighbors, family members, our emergency personnel, first responders call.
It's been a big one lately. I've heard it on the radio about
Yeah.
issues.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions?
You're doing great work.
No.
Oh, thank you
That's
very
okay.
much.
That's one of the things.
I love you, man. I love you.
Thank you. I'll be nervous next year, don't worry.
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
Try to be.
Yeah, try to polish it up.
I'll have my dad.
All right.
Thank you.
Janice, economic development.
Right?
Yeah.
So as some of you may be aware, my budget was always under the first selectman, so this is the first time that my budget is separate from the first selectman. As you can see, I'm looking for $88,077. What makes up that amount is salary, $500 of office supplies, dues and educations of $950. $450 of that, $950 is for Advanced CT, which is a nonprofit economic development organization that's paid for by the state and provides municipalities support. They also provide us with website technology that allows us and anybody that goes on our website to see what building and sites are available in Bethel. I also have mileage for $1,000 and contracted services, which is marketing. To date, have not had a formal marketing plan. We are at a point where we need to have a formal marketing plan, and we do have approval from the commission to move forward with a marketing plan that we think we will have done the first half of this year. But then we will need funding to support that marketing plan moving forward. So $5,000 is pretty conservative, I believe. But that marketing plan would be around attracting specific businesses. It would be around tourism. It would be about retaining businesses, education of businesses. And until we have the marketing plan, I can't give you all the information, but it could be collateral, it could be print materials, it could be video, it could be social media campaigns, it could be a bunch of things. So that makes up the total that we are requesting.
Can I just back up for 1 second? So, with everything that was going on with the sale of the properties and everything, and to the funding of the EDC account, the fund, like the landscaping stuff, talking to the board of finance chairman, the first selectman, there's some confusion that I guess the EDC thought the town was paying 100% of Janice's salary, but the town's only been paying 50% since the position was created. And then, well, since Janice was hired, because it was part of the first selectmen's back in the day. So it's part of that. We said it's time to probably move the whole thing into the operating budget for the town. And with doing that, the discussion was it probably doesn't belong in the first selectman's account anymore. So that's why it's a brand new account for this year. But that was talking to Nick and Dan on that. We figured it was probably time, if the town is going to fully fund the salary, to just make it its own department so we can kind of track what EDC actually costs us and not have it be buried in the first line.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I spoke in favor of it, and I just thought it should have been its own account, and Dan obviously agreed with it. That's
Yeah,
where we are
we all
today.
did. I do have a question. So because it was, we say buried, I mean, but isn't it allocated at all? Is there no way to get prior, or we don't?
So
even know?
when we do the first selectmen's, you'll see
Well, I'm
it
just
pulled out.
curious, I'm just what about the
So-
percentage?
Yeah, so previously in the first selectmen's account, EDC was budgeted for 38,950.
Okay.
And then the other part of Janice's came out of the
No,
park
I
fund.
understand that. I'm just still
So,
thinking of the street.
In round numbers, it was 40,000 as part of the first selectman's office.
Right.
Now it's 90,000 as a standalone. The bulk of that is now the other half of salary, and then the marketing plan and some of the other stuff that.
Right, but where does the 50,000? It was 40,000 in the first selectman's budget.
Yeah.
And where did the other 50,000?
It
come
was
from?
getting charged to the FJ Clark account.
Okay.
And that's what created that hole that was
I
going to be
understand.
filled when we sold the properties. But then when we got to the point of selling the properties, it turned out that money went to the general fund, not to FJ Clark.
All right.
So we knew we were creating a hole that was going to be filled by selling the properties. And then when we went to do it, the town attorney said, no, that money doesn't go to FJ Clark, it goes to the general fund.
Gotcha.
So then there was no way to fill that hole ever. So instead of then just funding them more from the fund balance so that they can continue to pay half, we just moved the whole thing to here. And then there's a proposal out there, and it has to go to a town meeting at some point, to fund the FJ Clark account just for like the landscaping piece, the maintenance of the park.
Yeah.
But EDC's good, because the EDC is not just for the park.
Right.
The work she does is for businesses and across the whole town. So it really doesn't belong in the Clark Park anymore, her salary.
Maybe this is just, I've never seen the Clark Park account, so we never see that.
Because we don't look at that.
Because we
It was
don't-
a
right, we don't
fund
look
set
at
up.
it,
in the
so-
fund.
okay.
The other funds, non-general fund, all fall under the Board of Selectmen,
Okay,
That's why I don't look at it.
all right,
except for water and sewer, which falls under the PUC.
yeah.
It is worth saying, the marketing part of this, even though it hasn't been used, it's going to be used. When she's actively
yeah.
working with a company to get somebody on board, and we may have to try to find another way also to add a little to it at some point. Maybe through our purse.
COVID money?
Yeah, well,
Never know.
yeah,
We're gonna get it done because it
Like,
needs to be
we were
done.
thinking your personal bank account.
Yeah.
Yeah, donation.
I still
Thank you,
I
Mary.
still have your debit card number.
Any questions?
Everybody understands what we did. It's a new account, so there's not a lot of history there, but I just think it just cleaned up a lot of stuff there.
Questions?
Okay.
We're good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Yeah, if, you guys need to take a 5-minute recess or?
yeah, no, so, I'll tell you what, let's do,
We've been here since.
yeah, let's do a 5-minute recess, and we have to vote on that actually,
Yeah.
so. I move that we do a 5-minute recess on favor of board selectmen.
I make a motion that we recess for 5 minutes. We have a second. All in favor?
Except recess, you go ahead and stop recording. Okay, everybody, welcome back. I declare that we are out of recess from the Board of Selectmen.
All right, well, is Bobby Joe all set? Or Bobby, you need another minute or?
I do, but that's okay.
Oh, is everybody all set? Robert, you need another minute with John?
It
or-
wasn't just me.
We're back. We're back. Yeah, well, we're back in session, so if you don't mind. All right, again, so we have Tommy Gallagher here and we're doing, emergency service first, is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So overall, there's a very slight, increase, but, we cut some things and we added to something. So salary is that's the stipend portion of the fire marshal emergency management salary there. And then under office expense, the radio tower lease, which is police, fire, public works, EMS. That is just the annual increase as part of the contract of 5% every year. So that's going up $1,100 for that. The Everbridge mass notification system. I'm looking for an increase in that for an added feature of that. Basically what it is it's the program we have now, but they have an audio bulletin board. So when a message goes out, it was a very convoluted way that, so if somebody gets the message or they don't answer the phone, a lot of people have a tendency to call back that number, right? Say, who called me? So we used to have it through the town phone system where I'd have to take the message, re-record it on that phone, and then they would call that number back. So it was very convoluted because if the first selectman sent the message or somebody else sent the message, the health department, we would have to figure out how to get it recorded on there so people want to hear it. So this program basically takes that system and takes whatever that messages we send, like we did with the water message the other day, and basically they call that number back and it's all pre-recorded. They can't leave a message. It just saves that whole step of, and then people end up leaving messages on that machine. It was convoluted. So that's part. And then just basic radios and supplies, equipment maintenance stayed the same. And then we have the active 911, which is the alerting feature for the fire and EMS agency. So that's a slight increase for the lease. And then training, we were able to cut that down by 1,000, cut it in half. Because again, a lot of the training that either the CERT team does or myself, a lot of it is free through the state of Connecticut, through the Department of Emergency Management. So sometimes we'll pay a CPR instructor or somebody for the CERT team for their certifications, where there's a couple of dues and associations in there too. So we'll cut that back by 1,000. So that's really it for emergency management.
Does anybody have any question for the emergency management? I know Tommy's gonna have a couple of them here.
I'm gonna have questions.
Questions, guys? Anybody in your second? Great.
The tower, no major problems with the tower up there.
The tower seems to be working fine, yes.
Yeah.
Did we get the backup for the
Yeah,
Right,
that's,
also-
that was installed, yes.
It's
the-
good.
Yeah, the repeater's back on.
Repeater.
Public Works.
Okay. Do the
Bye-bye.
fire marshal department?
Okay.
All right, so for fire marshal, again, we just have the salaries in there for myself, part-time employee, and then, under office expense, we're able to cut those down too as well with our meeting, with Brad. The code and subscription services, again, a couple years ago, I switched from one subscription service, which gave us PDFs and everything, and it was like $3,000. So there's some other programs out there now where it's, a lot less money, and it actually is a pretty robust system. So as soon as the codes update, they're in that online program. So in another year, the state of Connecticut's gonna update all their fire and building codes. So we don't have to worry about buying books all the time. No, we're not paper copies. It's all electronic. We can copy and paste code sections and send it to people and whatnot. So that's decreased there. And then just basic office supplies and whatnot. So we kind of saw that, you know, we weren't using all the money allocated and we can operate a little bit of a decrease there. And what training and education staying the same just for classes, for certification classes to maintain the continuing ed hours that we need for that. So there's different associations that have conferences and classes to attend that part three.
Can we talk about that part-time position?
Sure.
The prior year, you didn't use it, or you used a little bit of it, I guess. And we're carrying that money again for.
Yeah, it's, there haven't been a lot of, certified people out there. So we're looking at it now. I should hopefully have someone in the next month or two that's certified that will come on board. I have a very, very part-time person, but that works full-time somewhere else now. So yeah, we've been carrying that. So hopefully we're going to get that back in order and keep that going there, because it'll definitely assist. And, you know, we definitely need the help, because, you know, I'm kind of there 24/7 now. And
Was there stuff you were missing, inspections you were missing because
no,
you didn't have
we're
somebody?
doing
or-
okay with it. I mean, some of them are on a cycle, so a lot of them aren't every year. Some are every other year, every 3 years. So it depends on the year. So we're staying okay. I mean, we've got a few that are behind, but we've got a lot of big new construction projects too that are going on. So
So have you used much of that position yet this current year we're working on right now?
No.
You haven't used it yet again?
Yeah. And we're looking to-
So it's worth mentioning that we discussed this middle of last year. And part of the problem is that we're making it on the inspections. We're making it. But there are a lot of opportunities to move forward, because we've got growth in the town. We've got opportunities with FEMA and different things that we should be doing to, you know, look at what our safety levels in the town. And you can't do all that stuff. You just can't do it all. So at some point, yeah, we're making it, but at some point, you know, we don't have that other fire marshal or somebody certified can help with the inspections. That's what we need, is somebody to do some of those inspections to free him up to do some of the other big thinking that we need him to do. In fact, what was the training you got this year? You just.
Oh yeah, that was through the emergency management. I did the advanced academy through the National Emergency Management.
So we have a lot of emergency management things we should be thinking about, and it's kind of hard to get there, I guess is what I'm saying.
So I guess with that part-time salary, you're gonna be able to do bigger and better things instead of running around checking.
Right, yeah.
That's the hope. That's the hope.
John, I have a question.
Sure.
Did we charge for,
We do not. We proposed it maybe 15 years ago to do a fee schedule for inspections, and I don't think it did pass through the Board of Selectmen. It didn't go over well at the public hearing. Some area towns do.
I get charged $75 each door by Brookfield to go for.
Right. Yeah, we'd have to create an entire ordinance and get it passed.
Come back to us and we won't charge you.
I know. No, I was just, I know, I was just curious.
Okay. I know that two pretty small budgets. Does anybody have anything for Tyler? Pretty standard. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for sitting around.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
Stony Hill.
We have Fred and Chief Baker here.
Good evening, everybody. I think I know everybody here. Fred Ingram, I'm the chair of the fire commission, which is John Baker, Stony Hill. You know, we met with Chief Baker, the fire commission met with Chief Baker on January 18th, went over his budget. We made a few slight modifications to his request. And believe it or not, you know, with a 12% increase in request, his spending is relatively flat, with the exception of two lines. That being a $10,000 increase in turnout gear in the 202 account. It's the same amount as 87. A year, same amount. And then the other big increase was a little over $3,500 in vehicle maintenance, cost of goods and services there. And then I think they're also looking for some new managing software for the fire company. John could probably speak to a little bit about that. That's $4,500. And basically that equates to, you know, a $20,000 increase for just those three line items right there. If anybody had any specific questions on any specific lines, I'll defer to the chief.
Chief, can you talk about that software? Was that the bulletin board thing, or both departments are doing it?
So, the fire marshal's office was looking into this extensively because the current software that we use, emergency reporting, was bought out by a company, ESO, and ESO was looking to triple the cost of the software. So there's another company out there that actually some of the surrounding towns, Danbury, Brookfield, have changed to it, called First Two, which is slightly more expensive than the cost of emergency reporting before ESO goes up. But it also offers more, which is the alerting system that right now his budget carries, which is the Active 911. Okay, and that would get incorporated into this First Two, which is going to have two into one. And after speaking with Tom, another good factor about it is the two departments can be able to work together better as a single unit, where emergency reporting wasn't able to do that. And also the way the alerting system works is it will look at his pre-incident plans and we'll get real-time updates when he updates it in his office, versus the old system, which was all PDF based, where he would have to take it off of the system, rewrite the changes, and then upload it back in again.
So is this more of a tracking for in-house response times and all that? Is that how you're tying this all together?
Well, with management, the firehouse management software, it's an all-in-one system that we use, whether it's for the incident reporting to the state and the fire marshal's office. It is tracking personnel, it's tracking training, it's tracking our apparatus and equipment checks, it's tracking the equipment itself, its age, its replacement dates, its costs, and a lot of reports can be generated for those things.
Okay, I understand.
Yes, if I can. So currently, I might have my own software program and the pre-incident planning and my inspection. So you have a property file and an inspection. The pre-plan is all the information about fire alarm systems, the sprinklers, all that. So like you said, I have to create that and then pretty much print it out as a PDF and then upload it. But this will all integrate everything. So it'll be my software and all the firehouse information all in one system, and basically we split it three ways in the budget.
You use what you need, chief will use what he
And
needs.
I can split it equally budget wise. And the caveat of that is OSHA is updating all of their OSHA standards, and it's going to require that fire departments do pre-incident planning. Right now, we do it just because it's good to do, so we know what's going on in buildings and the firefighters are aware. OSHA is revamping their entire fire services standards. It's actually required by OSHA that we do pre-incident planning and that these systems are updated. So they can come in and do an inspection and say, show me all your pre-incident planning that you're meeting our mandates.
And that's for volunteer departments also?
Everybody can volunteer for that. There's a lot of big changes coming.
Yeah. So if government's involved, it's got to be good, I guess.
Yeah.
Chief, the cost of the turnout gear went up $1,000 in seven.
Well, it didn't go up that extensively, but we just found out that there is another cost increase over this, but we under budgeted last year. And yes, the cost of the material has gone up, and also the protection that's being offered has gone up. They now have a cancer barrier, which they didn't have before.
So how much of the turnout, just out of curiosity, how much does it cost, like, per set? Right.
Yeah, it's broken out here, $5,000 per set.
Well, sure.
And that's for a coat, pair of pants, and a harness.
What was it the year before though?
It
How
was
much was it?
about 46.
So it went up 400 roughly.
Right, but we only budgeted 4,000.
You had some savings in other accounts and you.
Exactly.
And how many firefighters are eligible to like go into a burning building on your department? Like you have different levels of fire people, right?
Correct. We do have different levels that I have right now, probably about 21, 22. I just got 6 people through the class that I'm gonna have to get gear for. That they've been measured, they have gear on the way. So one of the things that we do, and that's why it's been a set 8 sets of gear, is we're trying to get our top responders 2 sets of gear. And that's so that if there is an incident, they can just fall back on their second gear. If a set gets damaged, it has to be sent out for repair and inspection. If it has to get deconned further than what we can do in-house, they have a second set of gear to fall back on. The issue these days is that they do not want firefighters to just get hand-me-down gear, because you want to make sure that they have the dexterity and the glove and the boots fit and the gear isn't too small or too big to compromise safety.
But if I'm a fire, and again, I just don't know. If I'm a fireman, I join your department. Chief, I don't want to go in burning buildings. I'll help you run a pumper. I'll direct traffic for you. Do they get a full set of turnout gear too, or do they get something different equipped to them?
That set of gear does not fall under the mandate of being replaced every 10 years. So yes, they can get a set of gear that is either over 10 years or may not necessarily be custom tailored to them.
That's the thing. It's really the cost driver here is the shelf life on gear is 10 years. With every 10 years, we have to, our interior firefighters have to get new gear every 10 years. Yes, we can take that older gear and give it to you, Brian, as just a pump operator. If it fits you and you work with it, yes, you can continue to use that as an exterior guy. But the interior firefighters, we got to change their gear out every 10 years, and it becomes very costly.
Besides trying to get everybody the second set that goes in a working fire. Is that correct?
And the new people that join as well.
And right. So there's 3 different polling,
Yeah.
3 different areas.
So we've come up with this number of 8 sets, and it's the same for Bethel right now, although that number may increase for Bethel Fire Department strictly because they have a larger number of personnel. Now, we've been working with that number of 8 sets for each department for several years.
Now, will that go down though, as, I mean, if you have 22 interior firefighters and they need 2 sets, that's 44 sets. So in 5 years, you would have bought 40 sets, assuming that people don't have, like, or is this just a constant every year? It's 8 sets.
Right now, that seems to be the magic number that works, whether it's to replace a set of gear that's aging out, or I have new members coming in. Like I said, I just had 6 members that joined that went through the Fire One certification class that we had to order gear for, because they can't even go and complete the class without gear that will meet that standard of being less than 10 years and in good working order, because they are going to have to go through what they call a live burn and actually deal with live fire before they can be certified.
And if they quit, let's say they do it for a year and they go, hey, chief, not for me, I'm out. What happens with their gear?
Hopefully we have somebody else in
Hopefully
line
we have somebody
that
that's
fits.
at that same size, not to pick anyone out in particular, but I had somebody that joined that had size 5.5 shoe. I don't have anybody in the department in years that ever had a 5.5 boot. If she decides that this isn't for her, I doubt I'll find somebody in the near future within that 10 years that may that 5.5 boot. But
You weren't talking about, I thought you were talking about that.
Right.
We can advertise this as a shoe size,
But,
right?
and to that point, I still believe that 8 set, I'm gonna always work toward meeting those, because we have that turnover. We need to always work on recruitment and retention.
And there's
never
inevitably,
have
there's always at least 1 set every year, I think, in each department. It just gets damaged beyond repair, whether, it gets burned,
So
torn.
now you're down to 7.
Thank you.
Do you have an idea of what the attrition rate is? for new folks? Have you ever looked at that?
I haven't looked at it, in any detail. I mean, our biggest attrition is just college. You know, and that, one of the things that we do is, expect those members to come back during their holiday breaks and vacations. And so one of the things that happens is that gear still sits on the rack and they will go on calls during their breaks. And then obviously we have some that, move out of state and, or out of town that aren't going to be working for us. But, you know, that's why we keep that recruitment going and try and, you know, either solicit, and we've done this in the past, gone to the high school and actually had kind of like an open house and set up a table to try and do a recruitment. We've also been given permission to kind of do a demonstration in the back lot during lunch periods to give some, again, some hands-on and some incentive to possibly join, because we're trying to keep this volunteerism going as much as possible.
And that's what sucked me in 40 years ago. You know, I watched, you know, all my friends that were, you know, a year or two ahead of me. They were all leaving school in the middle of the day to go on fire calls. I'm like, what's going on here? What am I missing out on? I joined the volunteer fire department. I got to leave school in the middle of the day.
And he had a shotgun in the back window.
Chief, at night, do you have volunteers that man the fire station, or is it just they get a page and
They get a
everyone-
pager and everybody comes out that's available.
And that's including like ambulance personnel and stuff. like
Ambulance,
that?
because that is a higher call volume and you're almost guaranteed to go out once a night. We try and set up a schedule to get that minimum 2 people, because that's really all it takes to get the ambulance out the door. So we'll set up a 7 nights a week. And there is a setting on the pagers that the dispatch can use a tone that will only alert those pagers, and everybody else can sleep. So that's more of a scheduled performance on the EMS side versus fire.
There, I'm sorry. Just one thing before, and I know there's some more questions. In the back of the budget book is the capital plan. So departments that have capital, I'm going to try to remember to point that out before we release that department. At least take a look at it.
Yeah, I think John was gonna be looking for some additional funds to finish up. You just approved the funding for his Paratruck. That was a Paratruck strap.
Oh, that piece of equipment.
Yeah.
Can you
They
speak
said
of
the
that?
fire truck we did.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Exactly. Yeah, he's, that wasn't a motion made.
Paratruck struts. That was a beginner kit. He's gonna be looking for additional fundings in the capital to finish off that the kit. And I believe the number's right around 21,000.
Everybody, there was a request for CNR in the selectmen's meeting, and can you just tell me what that piece of equipment was? I'm sorry, say that again.
So it's called Paratech struts.
Okay.
Okay, and what that is for is it's stabilizing vehicles, let's say that get into an accident where it's on its side, on its roof. An example could be that the vehicle, one of the things that we have is 84 in our district, so you got high-speed vehicles. A vehicle, we had an accident where a car went underneath the tractor trailer. So those struts would be something that would not only be able to stabilize that tractor trailer when we try to get the party out of the vehicle, we may have to lift it. So it needs a lot of components. So that starter kit is only to get started. There's also another kit called the highway kit. It would add more because you would need more for those larger vehicles, larger incidents, higher speed incidents where you could have more lifting than you need just stabilization. Another instance, if it goes down an embankment up against a tree, because you have to be able to work safely. And not
Piece
have
of equipment to stabilize something.
That's what it's for, exactly.
And not to jump up, but why wouldn't that be in your regular budget? I mean, it was a CNR request, almost like it was I think we replaced a pond, a temporary pond, like it was something in the middle of the year that we needed it. Why wouldn't it be in your normal budget?
Because it's a one-time purchase and so it ages out, but the fact that the cost was over $10,000, we told that it should not be in the operating budget, it should go to capital.
For capital, okay, great. Bob or John, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I guess this question is gonna go towards Brad. Is in account number, their portion, the 5202, is there always turnout gears every year?
Correct.
Okay, so
here
it's
they've
nothing
been buying
new.
like 8 sets a year. So that's why it's been in the operating budget. Because it's not necessarily a one-time expense.
Okay, but religiously, if you went back 5 years, there was always a dollar amount for those turnouts.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
And there's 10,000 because of the price increase.
No, I got that
They
part.
didn't add more numbers of them. It just happened to be a big increase.
I just keep hearing that turnout gear lasts 10 years, and if you have great volunteers and they stay there, I would hope that that turnout number would decrease over a 5-year span. And then I could almost think it's a capital item.
So, I mean, the best case
The number
scenario
goes
is
down.
if we do have one, a member that stays more than the 10 years. So maybe in 5 years, I get them an additional set of gear so that because they do such high call volume and their gear is getting used and abused, they'll have that second set to fall back on if, let's say, they have a catastrophic failure on their gear or it has to go out for repair or out for decon. They have that second set of gear that was made for them, does fit them correctly. Or every 5 years, they'll get a new set of gear. And the fact that they're doing a lot of calls, let's say that gear, at a minimum, if it goes to a fire, it's got to be taken out of service. It's got to go through the gear extractor. It's got to get dry. You're talking a minimum of about 10 hours just to get it back to service.
So these 8 sets or whatever the number is every year, you're rewarding a veteran firefighter by giving them a second set. You're not just trying to give every 22 firefighters that could go in a building 2 sets.
We look at it every year. All right, where is those 8 sets going to be needed? It could be one set for somebody that's been around for a while that they've aged out of the 10 years. It could be somebody that just joined and needs a set of gear. It could be
a combination of, yeah.
Right. Or the rewarding of a second set.
And I think we're trying to stagger that a little bit too, is, you know, this member that has 2 sets of gear, yeah, he may have one brand new set, but his second
But
set,
he already wore out.
and his second set may be 5 to 7 years old, so that, you know, he doesn't have 2 sets that have to be replaced at the same time.
But the goal isn't to have 2 new sets for every firefighter if he's only been there a year. He's already proven himself.
Exactly. They have to prove themselves.
Yeah, you gotta
before
prove
we're gonna-
absolutely.
Because if you're only going to make 2 or 3 calls a year, I'm not going to get you second.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
But when the new guys come on, the 6 people we've got come on this year.
Right.
We're trying to get them
one
one
set.
set. Say one.
They have to have one to complete their training.
Chief,
Great, thank you.
Wait,
Chief,
We'll go either way. If you'll be quick, I'm sorry.
I'm not gonna be quick.
Not this
Chief, I'm looking at your capital budget. You know, we talked a little bit about it. You weren't here for our discussion.
No, I
prior.
apologize. I couldn't get everyone.
And, you know, one of the things we discussed was cost and what was kind of plausible, you know, where we could probably pay cash for a vehicle. And the number you have is exactly was the number that we had said, 1.6 million, somewhere around there. I guess, you know, I said it once in the prior meeting, and I just want to say it to you. You know, I listened to the fire study. I listened to everyone. And I've heard the exigency of getting this truck on the road. Ordering a truck and waiting 3 years doesn't work if it's truly an exigent circumstance. And what we asked is that you guys go out and try and find a demo model, some sort of way, because, you know, we can't have it both ways. If it's exigent, we need to figure this out quick, right? We can't say, well, you know, we want this, we want that, we want this, and we're going to wait 3 years for a truck, because it kind of dilutes what the purpose of the truck was. So we're just hoping when you put your equipment committee together, you know, with the fire commission, that you take that into
I mean,
account.
we did look at that, but you have to look at it this way too, is there's so much downtime. People are trying to do the exact same thing that you're suggesting. Let's look and see what's out there for used equipment. So they're getting eaten right up. So there's not a lot out there. It's
But what I don't, and again, I'm saying this respectfully, and I don't want anything I say not to be respectfully. What I'm hearing from everyone is the ship has left the harbor and we're going to order a truck. And what really upsets me about that is the whole argument about this truck was the exigency and how important it was to have a truck in place. And just saying everyone's doing it, you know, to not try and to not give an honest effort is a disservice to the taxpayers in Bethel. And it's not a financial disservice. You know, what's the difference between a 1.6 and a $1.8 million truck over the life of the truck? The disservice I'm talking about is you came to us talking about the exigency in this. and how important it is. And again, this is respectful. This is me just being honest. And to say that we can't find anything without trying. I remember you guys came probably, what was it, 4 years ago? Was it 3 years ago, 4 years ago?
Yeah.
2 or 3.
You had found a demo, and again, I don't know what they're called, Quinn or whatever they're called. You know, you found one for 900,000 or 950. Someone told a story about another truck that became available for whatever. I just think that I would spend a lot of my effort on finding something that's available sooner rather than later, because it just, you know, it dilutes the argument for the truck.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's saying that we're not gonna look for a demo model. The problem that I think we're gonna incur with a demo model is if we find one, we have to be able to act on it within like 24 hours. And, you know, you have bid process, I mean,
You have to have a PO number.
we gotta have a PO number basically within 24 hours if we find a truck. You're gonna be able to act on it immediately. I mean, are you gonna be able to waive a bid process for that? I mean, what is?
We need the information, then we can make a decision. And I think what Brian's saying is make an honest effort and let's look at all.
Yeah, no,
all-
you know,
what I mean?
I don't think
you're
anybody's saying
no.
we're not gonna make
I
an
mean,
effort.
there's nothing to say that we can't start thinking about, you know, Bob had mentioned this probably 6 or 7 years ago, starting a sinking fund for these purchases of trucks or whatever. I mean,
And that was
there's
actually
nothing,
a recommendation of the fire commission to
right, but
establish
there's
that.
nothing to say that we can't start working on the funding and have something in place, right?
And-
If you find the apparatus, I mean, we could do our part. All I'm asking is you do your part too. And again, it's just from what I've been hearing, it's like, you know, all we're talking about is ordering in 3 years and I can't do this. What I'm saying is, let's find a way to do it quicker. That's
Well,
all.
the reason why we're bringing up that timeframe of immediate decisions is the manufacturer that we deal with actually will give out to the dealerships a report of trucks that are coming off the line that either are going to be allocated as a demo or allocated as available because somebody did back out of the contract. And if we could make that decision within 24 hours saying, all right, well, this meets the criteria of what we're looking for in a truck, we'll take it, but it's got to be within 24 hours or it's going to go to someone else. That's why we're asking
So
if
that's
that
something we have
commitment
to
would be
discuss.
there. And that's
we have
every
to look
single
at-
month.
We can discuss that. We'll take
Yeah.
the information and, you know, we might be able to get the funding in place where if you find something, we call a special meeting or we, you know, however it needs to happen.
Well, this will how likely go before the voters.
Yeah.
For referendum.
There is a process for a bid waiver too. It's in the
Yes.
charter.
Yeah. I mean, that's.
But I mean, I'm just saying that if we were to put this, if we were to somehow secure as a group $1.6 million, that if they come to us, they find the truck, we'd have to have the money ready to go.
Sure.
That's, I think, their point.
Yeah.
We can't wait.
Yeah, we can.
And we can be working
15
on our
days
part.
notice,
Right.
doing a town meeting, doing it like.
Well, but all municipalities have the same problem on getting funded. They can't, they don't have a PO number. Brookfield doesn't have a PO number tomorrow if they find a truck. There's a process the town municipalities that buy fire trucks have to go through. Bethel's not unique to that problem.
Right, but the unique thing is the fact that it's taking 3 years to build trucks.
Yeah, but John,
No, if a truck became available and we had to act in 24 hours, there's no municipality that could act like
John,
that.
but we're saying is possibly we can go to the voters ahead of time and have permission of the
Without a VIN
voters.
number.
So they
And
will,
just
we will know that the voters have said, yes, we are okay with the town spending 1.6 million on a fire apparatus that's
Should it become
suitable,
available.
you know, for Stony Hill.
Just
And
give
that
the-
way, if they call us, we're able to say,
Right.
do it.
Now
And, you
you
know,
have a
probably
number.
put
We
you
have
ahead of a lot of
number.
other people.
We
on
have
the
the
list.
approvals already.
But just, it's kind of similar to what we have going on with the high school HVAC.
Yeah,
right now.
that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
It's very
It's
similar.
contingent on.
Right.
Right, and
Yeah.
the funding's there, they just haven't started the project.
Yep.
So my question is why couldn't we do that same process that we're saying could potentially happen is order the truck? And then if something does come up, whether it's going to be a
Because once you
a
order the
demo
truck,
or-
I'm not, and
Yeah.
I'm not being rude, once you order the truck, the ship is set sail.
It's what's
That's
the
what's coming,
emergency, as
that's
you were
what's
trying to
coming
say.
in.
Yeah.
So I don't want to wait 3 years if I've got the same thing that I can have earlier.
So, I mean, are you telling me we're not gonna be able to find a demo truck within 3 years?
No, I'm not saying that.
I don't believe that.
I'm not saying that I'm not gonna continue to look. But I'm just saying that if you put in the order and you find something,
We'll take this up. We'll let your apparatus committee and we'll take this up at another day.
They had a recommendation earlier to form an apparatus committee of approximately 7 people comprised of people from your department, people from the commission, and some outside townspeople as well. So we'll take that up at our.
But there's a couple
commission
steps.
meeting.
You guys start working your angle, we'll work our angle, and then hopefully they all come together and we're in good shape. That's all. There's steps that
Maybe
have
you
to
get
happen.
lucky and you find a demo tomorrow.
Exactly. Then we'll have an emergency.
Then we'll have a
meeting, and then
special
we'll have
meeting
a,
tomorrow.
Don't find it tomorrow. Give us a month to get it.
It's all-
Meeting and everything.
It's all of the
Unless you want-
emergency.
All right, can we go back to our budget meeting?
So one more thing.
Rich will sign it.
Bob, what about
I've been waiting
Bob?
very patiently.
Okay.
Can I-
Okay, so let's next time, let's stick to the capital one time.
Yeah, but we're still on the regular budget here.
I had a simple question. It's procedural.
Sounds simple now.
Given what time it is, I'm hoping for a simple answer. But Fred, I guess I'm trying to understand the process that you all went through. I'm assuming you're here as kind of the representative from the fire commission. Is that
He's the
right?
chair, right?
Yeah, I'm the chair of the fire commission, and the charging documents of the fire commission say that I will present the fire department budgets to the board of finance and board of
Got it,
Select. So
department head.
I'm assuming Chief Baker and his team presented to you. To the commission, and the commission made a unanimous decision to present this budget.
they made some cuts and then endorsed what was the final.
That's all, thanks.
Are we talking about the fire truck or budget right now?
Just budget overall.
The operating budget.
Bob's big picture.
And we did cut the budget.
We get an extra level of comfort. The fire commission was created for the purposes of
Give it a
coordinate
Right.
and give that additional. And the fire commission did make some minor modifications to John's budget. Some minor reductions that were recommended. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I understood the process that you want.
Thank you, Bill. Dan, did you have some?
Yeah, the one thing we did want to bring up is the chief's command vehicle. Chief, explain to us with the capital, we're playing here with the 110,000 for chief command vehicle, what that is.
So one of the things that I had come up with is a vehicle that would be dual purpose. Yes, it needs to be command. The chief is responsible for commanding the incident. So it would have a command board, it would have radios, it would be that presence. But at the same time, we're an all volunteer town. The fact that the next apparatus, a fire truck or a ladder truck or a tank truck, whatever it is, how long is that going to be before they get to the incident? So yes, I need a vehicle that's going to have in it some first responder equipment on it. So full turnout gear, SCBA, a water can, a fire extinguisher, a set of irons if we need to make a force entry to try and make a rescue. OSHA has a rule called the 2 in 2 out rule that you can't go in unless there is a second person outside. Now, with that said, if there is an imminent life safety, then you can waive that and you can go in. But obviously I need the tools to do that. The set of irons, which is an axe and a Halligan bar to force entry if necessary, have to have the turnout gear, have to have the SCBA, have to have the water can. So those are things that I wanted to have available as a first responder. Also as a first responder to do EMS, I need a place for the first in bag, an AED, a meter. So it was trying to make it the best of both worlds, and a command vehicle and a first responder vehicle. If I'm coming down to, let's say, the downtown area where the chief of the Bethel Fire Department is doing that command role, I need my equipment to assist in active firefighting. If he has the command roles filled, whether it's him as the incident commander or the safety officer or operations, even operations could be going inside the building, but I need to have the equipment to fill that role. I'm not going to waste the time to go to the firehouse to drive the apparatus or command the apparatus. I'm going to go right to the scenes.
So this is a new vehicle or
It's a
something?
replacement. I mean, I do have
So it's something you're going to
truck
drive,
now.
but with equipment in it. Is
Right. What I have now is basically what I'm asking for, but it's just poorly designed. I have an F-250 truck. It's an 05, which has 65,000 miles on it. It's rusting out badly, but it only has a tonneau cover on it. The slide out that has all the equipment on it is not properly on that slide out because I want to get one with a cap on it so that all the equipment is always easily accessible. It's going to have compartments on either side to get the equipment out. So it's trying to improve on what is existing.
It's a better version of what he has now. That's 20 something years old. And this is also the third time the fire commission's recommended this to the board of selectmen for acquisition.
How much of the price is the actual truck? The truck is minor compared to the rest of it. It's just the outfitting of it and all the equipment. you wanna put
Yeah,
into it.
I mean, the equipment, I mean, just 2 radios alone were $14,000.
And you don't have radios in the other truck that can come out, like switch out like a police car?
They're becoming obsolete
They're
because they're not
antiquated.
digital, they're analog radios. So to put the obsolete in, that's gonna have to be replaced shortly.
And all the interoperability that's being required now with, being able to interface with different municipalities all across the state. He doesn't have that ability on the radios that he
And,
has.
and listen, for what you guys do, I'll say it again, it's such a service to the town. But when we have Megan here talking about food pantries, and we need a ladder truck and we need another ladder truck, and now it's another 100, the money's coming from the taxpayers and it's difficult sometimes.
And we understand that, and, the fire commission, and that's why we tried to hold their operating budgets as flat as possible, keeping in mind that, we're looking for some big ticket items as far as trucks.
What was the state bid on you're bidding on F-250? What's the
I don't
state
have
bid
that.
on that?
The $41,470, but that was over a year ago.
All right, so
It's a $50,000.
40, well, no, on the state bid it'll be below that. Well, quite a bit. I mean, that's why you go with the state bid. So you're saying to outfit that truck is almost 70,000 for this in-sync command thing?
So I got a quote from Fleet Auto. It was $40,925 for installing lights, radios, and mounting of equipment.
You're telling me it was 40,000 just to install it, or is that
No,
include
the purchase of
equipment.
No, the purchase of the equipment. and
Is that
the
including the
labor to
radios, or
install
is
it.
that utility communications or someone else?
Yeah.
Is that including the radios?
No, that's not including the radios.
All right, so
So
you're,
that's an additional $14,000 for the purchase of the radio.
So I will throw this in. His truck looks like crap. I mean, I'll just be honest, this truck does need to be replaced. The question is, we have to, as a governing body, decide.
Well, here, can we replace the truck and we have something reliable? And then maybe next year jump in for the 40 or 50 grand to step it up to what you want? You know what I mean? I get it. The need is there. I am not saying that. But again, we want you to have something nice.
Let me speak to that, Nick, because we did that with the Bethel Fire
They
Department.
never finished it.
We in 2008, we bought a ladder truck chassis, and we put a 1977 ladder on it. So now here we are in 2024,
Will a ladder go on that?
and we got a 20-year-old
What are you
chassis
saying? What are you
with
saying?
a 50-year-old ladder on it that we're looking to replace for $2 million.
But you guys were all in favor of it back in 08. You were all good with it.
Well, we were under the premises in 08 that in 2010, we were going to put a new ladder on that truck. That never came to be.
So we're gonna buy a whole new chassis for 2 years? I thought.
No, we were going to put.
Oh, another ladder
We
on
were
top of
gonna
that
put a
chassis.
new ladder on that check, that 2008 chassis in 2010. That never came to be.
Okay, can we do that now?
I think it's too late. You can ask Chief McCollum, but I think he's gonna fight you on that one.
No, I guess what Nick is trying to say, just in capital over the next 2 years, the requests between the two fire departments are over 4 million, over 4. And then I know you could shrug your shoulders, but the following year, there's another million for another truck. So, you know,
Cost of neglect over
I
several
shrug my
years.
shoulders because they're needs, they're not requests, they're needs. Look at the age of the equipment that we're trying to replace. The problem is, for 25 years, there was supposed to be money being put in an account to do exactly what you're talking about. No boards or commissions before you have ever done it, so I'm hoping you folks will get together and figure it out quickly that, you know what? We gotta start putting money aside for fire apparatus.
specifically fire apparatus refurbishment and replacement. Because if you refurbish fire apparatus in a timely manner, you extend the life of that. And we're good with that. I know Chief Baker would tell you, he's good with that. I'm good with that. But you got to do that within like the 15-year to 20-year point of the truck. You got to do that, or the technology overtakes it and it's worthless.
And
That's the
Chris,
point.
we understand it. There's, the way we run this is people vote on it, and people
that.
voted on $60 million for schools. People voted on 14 million for the police department. You know, we live in a democracy, and people voted on it.
I'm
So
we're a taxpayer too, just like
we're trying to get
everybody
over a
else.
hump of paying $6 million in debt, in mortgage
Well,
payments.
all I'm
Let's
saying,
just,
Nick's suggestion is a creative solution that I would hope that you know that if this board with all these members, from what I can remember since I've been on the Board of Finance, when I was 8 years ago, and since I've been on the Board of Selectmen, every promise we've made, we've honored. So if this board tells you we'd like to purchase you the truck this year, and we would like to defer the cost next year, I mean, that's, you know, if that's what the boards decide, I don't see why we'd be attacked saying we're not gonna do it. I don't understand that.
Nobody said that.
Well, yeah, someone did say that.
Yeah, in
You
the
brought up the
past.
aerial ladder and
Right.
we never did it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
but that's not this board.
no, that's my whole point. That's what I just said.
So let's,
All right,
you know.
we know we need to come up with a plan to fund this stuff.
Absolutely. Let the apparatus committee come up and they'll give us.
Bob, you did answer your question, or ask your question.
Yeah, you did. This is the one I gotta sit down.
Go back to the next, ask this question.
I do have just one thing I wanted to say. Chief McCollum, let's also go back and remember that there were members in the fire department that, in my words, almost tried to create and perpetuate a fraud on this town in connection with that.
And they're no longer around.
So you guys have done a tremendous job in reestablishing the credibility, but I really
I would
do
agree.
take serious offense to you saying we didn't do what we said we were going to do. We had that situation. We got through it. The fire commission was created. That's a tremendous step in the right direction. I think to Brian's point, Dan's point, these boards will do what's right. And I think we're now just starting to get over the sting of what happened back then in believing what we are being told is a real need. So again, I said to Deline to kick me to make sure I didn't say this. She didn't kick me.
Can you say this arm?
But I just want to give it. I've loved spirited debate.
I understand that.
I just want to get that out there. And let's now move forward.
This is 25 years not being funded. That was my point.
This is a whole generation, a new generation of people.
Okay, so let's wrap it up.
Yeah,
with that part.
Excellent.
Do I get the award for the longest presentation?
You're already half done.
The most spirit.
Listen,
Somehow you knew that. I see Laura still back here.
at the end of the day,
Laura, you're not going to that. You know that, right?
Ryan, everybody, at the end of the day, we all appreciate what you do. We're all family here. We're just trying to figure out how to get everyone to eat and spend money on it. And thank you. Thanks for being up here. Next.
Yeah, boy, you can give me a
Get
cap,
Chris-
right?
get
Right,
Chris
right.
McCollum on hot seat.
Can I leave now?
No, you gotta stay one more time. And I think McCollum warmed up the crew here, so I
Be clear on that ladder truck. That Bethel's ladder truck, the chassis was purchased in 2008 when I first became chief of that department. And there was a 50-year-old ladder that was put on that chassis. The original plan was to put a new ladder on that chassis in 2 or 3 years following that, knowing that the town at the time could not afford. It was like $1.5 million at the time to do it all at once.
Yes. We
Well,
know
we're
the
talking
story.
with
We know
you,
the
based on
story.
paper.
This was under
Totally
Different
different deal.
people,
Right, this was under the Bob Burke administration.
and it always goes back to Bob
Just
Burke.
one point, 0809 was a rough financial time, so let's.
Yeah.
And then 2 or 3 years ago, you went through the whole scenario where
thought
you
you
were
were
sold the
getting
bill of
along.
goods.
I think everybody knows the history.
Yeah,
Neither guy
it's
is
a
just-
And we go back to Bob.
Neither one of
So
us.
now that we've got
Bob, was there
Bethel
anything
Fire,
else you wanted us?
guys, we
You're
got
just
Bethel
warming
Fire
up.
Department up. Let's
All
get
right,
moving
all right,
here.
let's bring this in.
Bethel Fire Department.
Bethel Fire Department.
All right, so again, I'm gonna start by saying that you know, the Bethel Fire Department is asking for a relatively flat spending increase. Doesn't seem like it when we come in and say we need 7.5% more than last year. But again, that's attributed to basically two line items. One being the turnout gear, 8 sets of gear is about $10,000 more than it was last year. And, in the 208 account, he has, a significant increase, and it's just the cost of goods and supplies, and that equates to about $15,000 in new spending.
One thing I noticed, and how come on your guys' turnout gears, it's
Knew somebody was gonna
57.
ask that.
Yeah, I was gonna ask it too.
Because Chief Baker, breaks his down, when he puts out a line item for turnout gear, he has coats, pants, and a harness.
Okay.
And then he has a separate line for gloves, helmets, and this, you know, boots, miscellaneous. When Chief McCullum puts his budget together, he makes it all encompassing. He has coats, pants, harness, boots, helmets, gloves, hoods, it's all together. That's why his cost is a little bit more.
Great, Cynthia, did you?
Okay, to that point, I've been talking about this for a couple of years, but I don't understand why the two departments can't use the same template, and what you just described is a little.
We, as the fire commissioner, are trying to work on that.
Okay, no, but you
We're-
understand, I'm
I want-
flipping back and forth.
I want to get together with the comptroller.
Okay.
Because there's some things in both budgets that he'll have Chris will have in a certain count, and John will have the same thing, but it's in a different account.
I understand.
And it was way worse 3 or 4 years ago.
I know.
And
Okay,
it was a
well,
big
baby steps.
realignment, but it's getting a
But
little.
what I'm trying, the point I'm.
I just took over as chairman last month.
And it's
much
great.
to my-
You sound very, stable.
I wasn't there that night.
You're doing a great job.
It is.
No, it was because Dan sent an email that says, "Oh, you're gonna have to run that meeting, by the way." And you held a job.
What I'm trying to say is it's just a little frustrating because flipping back and forth, I'm saying, and if it has sort of like a standard
Yes,
and you're
correct.
working on
It's
that.
confusing for the commission as well.
Right,
because
so-
we're trying to review their budgets and make recommendations, and it's like,
I
wait a minute,
know.
what happened over here?
And
How
then
come
if
it's
you-
not happening over
Even
here?
if you had a template and like one department didn't have stats or something, it'd just be blank. I mean, we have the same.
It's a goal.
Okay, good.
Hopefully
I
we'll have
love
that,
goals.
we'll have that for you next
Baby
year.
steps.
The
baby
reason I
steps.
have all the gear together is
No.
because it was talked about earlier.
It makes sense.
Everything now is,
Yeah, it totally
but
makes
everything
sense.
now is a 10-year shelf life. So I buy for firefighter X, Y, and Z, and everything they're issued, it's a complete set, and it's 10 years, and we know we're gonna replace all that.
And
all the
perhaps
same
all,
timeline,
both
right?
the departments should
Right.
do it that way. I don't know.
They
I'm
couldn't
just
say
saying.
what the pizza.
Well, exactly, but you know, some of them don't have.
We also use a firm out of Long Island, both departments have used the same firm, who can come and alter gear to a certain extent to better fit
And why
somebody if
wouldn't we
somebody's
use the
left.
same vendor?
We're
for
using
both
this,
departments?
we're using the same vendor out of Long Island, which I just said, to alter gear. So if somebody leaves, if Nick leaves today and I get another guy in that fits his gear,
I
but it's a little
understand what
loose.
you're
Can't bring that.
They'll
down.
gotta
can
bring
all-
that in a lot.
That's not 189. I
You
get
know,
it.
like,
Eventually, bring that in a lot.
for both departments, they use the
Bob,
same
there's no talking.
vendor for that. And in for both departments, they'll come in altered gear.
Yes, that's what I'm
Okay,
saying. That's
that's
what we
what
do.
Okay,
Yeah,
fair enough.
and he's very good because he comes up and he comes right up here. You
I'm
don't have
just-
to set it.
I'm all about
Yeah.
consistency and
Yep.
standardization.
Continue in your.
Eli with me.
I think that was pretty much it. I mean, like I said, you had those two line items that were the driving factors in the cost increase. It was his vehicle inspections, or his and his turnout gear, basically equated to the $15,000 increase. He had a little bit extra money in for training. He has a lot more members that have joined in the last 12 to 18 months. And they have to get on board with their training and get up to date. So, and if anybody has any specific line item questions, happy to entertain.
Just I mean, I'm assuming that your thermal cameras are much different than law enforcement's thermal camera. Like, do yours tell you the heat of the location? And I mean, are they more, like, I'm just looking at the line, 2,500 to repair and test. I mean, they work differently. I'm assuming, like the flare we use, you just see heat signatures. You wouldn't know the temperatures. Yours must be much more advanced than that.
They're more advanced. You're gonna get different colors. It's gonna have an actual temperature reading, different colors based on the different heats. So it's gonna be able to identify, show differences in temperature and liquids.
The reason that account is up, Ryan, is because we had to repair one last year that cost about $740 something to repair it. But when I do stuff for repairs like that, I'm looking at the overall cost of the camera, and there's a break point where you would just get rid of it. It wasn't at that break point, so I repaired it. And it's still on the rig today working. What happened was the screen on it went. They were able to repair it. And we have a couple others that are getting older. We have some newer ones, but we have some that are older. So I just want to make sure we got enough money there to repair them if we can and not have to buy new ones that cost way more money.
And what's the shelf life on those?
Oh, geez, that the one that we
Well, the one you
repaired.
just repaired was
You
something
bought.
I bought when I was chief.
You bought it. I mean, there's a long
In
shelf life.
2008.
As long as you're
It's
taking
old,
care of
yeah.
them, Brian, they last. And we're all taking care of them.
And your turnout, you're buying eight sets on the
Sets, yeah.
And
We
you're
found that
a
to be the
bigger
magic
department,
number
that's
for-
still
Yes, we
covering.
are.
Yeah.
So far, so good, Nick. I mean, I got a little bit of extra out of ARPA for some sets that kind of helped me there.
He had been, Chief McCollum had been behind, because for whatever reason, his predecessor had not, budgeted accordingly
Didn't
for
do
the
it here.
8 sets during his term.
I got it. Any other questions? Moving along. I do appreciate the service. It's a huge benefit to the town. It's huge.
Capital.
Capital. Oh, capital.
Oh, my God. There we go.
Didn't we do that portion?
We're really going.
Chris he inserted himself in our capital discussion. Now it's 3:30.
Yeah, you pre-warned us. Yeah.
Well,
We're all friends. You gotta- you
Yeah,
gotta-
but family, that's what Bob said,
Family.
I want to let Bob start the
Yeah,
capital
yeah.
plan, if you don't mind. Starting to get punchier a little bit. Ian, you want to go over the capital requirement?
Well, it's actually no capital this year, which is great.
Yeah.
I mean, we've.
Well, that's the fiscal year we're in.
Right.
Right, we're actually
Yeah, but next
recommending,
year,
we do have
Yeah, you're right.
$7,000.
I'm looking, I've got this covered at the top. so.
In this year, I'm sorry,
No,
in 24, 25.
24, 25, we need $7,000 to replace the tires on the ladder truck.
John will make a donation.
They expire in July, so it kind of coincides with the new budget.
I get it.
Right.
Get them done.
So where are we on air packs? Because we talked about those a few times.
We're waiting on
We're waiting on
12.
delivery.
Wait on 12.
Right. Supposedly July, August are coming
That
in.
money's
But
been
we already
allocated.
bought those.
Those are, well, Brad's got the money put aside,
Allocated, right?
It is budget.
allocated.
Was that ARPA? we
And we're
used?
getting interest.
No, this is back CNR, right, Brad?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is 12 additional air packs.
Those are 12 air packs that were ordered several years ago.
The ones on
This
here
isn't
now.
new, we
They'll-
already allocated.
Oh, so this is
So-
the carry now.
No. So these,
No, no.
these are new ones. They
Going
ordered like
forward,
2 years
additional,
ago.
Yeah, yeah, going forward, there will be more, yeah.
I'll tell you in a
Because
minute.
what we do is when the packs come in, those will go on the frontline rigs and we shuffle everything. And the oldest ones will go out the door. We don't keep them. We have a set amount that we have that's for training and for spares and then what's on the apparatus.
So
Anything above that goes.
September 14, 2021, 12 complete air pack and SCBA bottles were approved by the
Right.
Board of Finance. The bottles we got in, the air packs we're still waiting on 2.5 years later.
No, we bought separate bottles also. Those,
Yeah, well-
those air packs are gonna come in
Oh,
complete,
Yeah,
which will
okay.
be a good thing for us
Yeah,
because
there's also
then we're not buying
14,000.
bottles.
Yeah.
Right.
And have 12 brand new bottles, 12 brand new masks and 12 brand new packs.
We paid for them, I'm sure.
We haven't paid the bill.
Yeah.
No,
the
it's
money-
allocated, I get it.
Yeah, yeah.
The money's.
Yes,
So
sir.
that was at a
It
CNR
is
back then,
allocated.
obviously?
CNR, yeah.
All that's left this year is $7,000 to replace the tires. on the
Tires.
fire truck,
On, truck one.
The ladder truck.
Yes, sir.
Unless you want to flat out
And
replace
that's-
the
Well,
whole.
I mean, I noticed you have
And
2.5
that's-
million this year along with tires, so I'm just trying to figure out which one are we going for?
The tires are state bid. So one thing the state does, that's a state bid.
You know, all kidding aside, I really do think that we need to, you know, really give some thought and figure out how we spread this out so we bring everyone up to date and we do it in a way that works and we're not setting ourselves up 25 years when none of us are on these boards and doing, and leaving our problem, you know,
I agree.
we do it in facilities, we replace equipment and try and spread it out and create a plan so it's not as painful for the corporation. I think, you know, you have the commitment of every person on this board to try and figure this out, but we need cooperation too.
And that's our
the key.
goal.
We need to cooperate with one another.
The biggest thing that's hindering us all right now is we're behind. We're trying to play catch up.
We get it.
But as long as we're moving forward and we're working on the first part of the equation.
And that's why I said earlier during the Board of Selectmen's meeting that, you know, we're looking for 2 ladder trucks. But yeah, the priority is to get one for Stony Hill, knowing that, you know, it's just not feasible to go out and spend $4 million+ on 2 ladder trucks.
With the mortgage payments we have.
It really is.
I mean, we just knew it wasn't gonna happen. So,
I know, but the issue is that as a group or groups, we have to come up with a plan. I mean, they did a Holdsworth study years ago, excuse me. We did a Holdsworth study years ago where the town paid for a plan to set out and look at all the stuff we should be buying as apparatus. Nobody touched it. But I'm not blaming it. It just is what it is because the economic reality is what it is. But I think going forward, you know, we just have to get something down on paper and commit to something. So we're not kicking the can down the road because it's been done that way a long time.
Yep.
I think everybody's on board with that. We just got to figure out how to do it together and.
how do we catch up and
Right.
Yeah.
But for Brian's point, let's plug the hole in the bucket because there's a big need up there.
Yeah.
And then let's work on the plan at the same time. You know what I mean? So
The capital amount, I'm thinking it's a typo, but maybe not. It shows in the Stony Hill budget. I apologize for going back, but it shows 1.6 million this year and next year.
It was on the 24 request. So they're still requesting it. We're in 24 and they're requesting it now. So I showed it on both. It's not 2 different trucks. It's one. Yeah. I didn't.
Well, that's much better.
Well, we have 2 turnout gears, so I mean, we should have a.
You look worried, Bob.
They're just
You look worried.
reminding us.
Bob, they figured we deny one of them.
They were signed a trick, that's the 2 you want.
You picked up on it. Good job, Bob.
And you saved,
Correct.
1.6
I knew
million
my man was gonna
dollars.
pick that up.
They are currently requesting them in 24, so they're on 24's request list. But if they don't get it in 24, it's gonna be on 25. That's why. I showed it.
Thank you.
All right,
All
so
right, I'm good.
we're good with the fire departments, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, Brad, you got 20 minutes. Run through these.
You had the long presentation tonight.
Oh, you can't combine, right?
He's picking up. He's present.
You're not gonna let Fred talk? No.
Come on, Fred, you wanna say?
Oh, I see.
anything?
I see what you're saying.
We're doing our stuff. Oh, we gotta go to 100.
All right, Mr. First Selectman, do you wanna do Selectman or do you want me to take it?
Go for it.
All right.
Oh, Brad.
Faster than me.
Brad, what are we doing here for?
10-100 Selectman.
Is that even in our?
Oh,
budget?
sorry, Brad Hearing, Comptroller. Town of
Yeah,
Bethlehem.
that's good. State your name, spell it.
Right door.
Okay, let's get this party started.
Should we start with the capital request of Select?
Yeah,
Yeah, none with capital for the night.
Denied.
Tonight.
I'd like a fire truck.
Who doesn't want?
You should have some lights on that top or that diversion.
He's got a plug.
We'll give you some.
Just kidding.
All right,
Okay, well,
so,
I'm gonna get-
Selectman account overall is down. Obviously, there's 2 reasons. The first one is we moved $40,000 out to EDC. The second part is the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance approved purchasing out the lease that was the first Selectman vehicle, which was repurposed to the building inspection department, and then purchase of a new vehicle for the first Selectman. So obviously, we don't need the $4,600 that was in the current year budget for a lease. The other changes are just minor Selectman expense. We're trying to get it to where we've actually spent on it. Last fiscal year, we spent $1,100. The budget for this, the one that we're in now is 500. We're requesting 1,000. Same thing with office expense. The actual last full year we have is 3,300. We didn't go all the way up to it. We went to 3. Dan's promised to be a little tighter with it. He's not actually doing that. He's hearing that now for the first time, but we're trying to.
But he agrees with you.
Yeah, I do.
He will agree to it.
Sponsors,
Yeah.
sponsors.
But it is important that this first selectman has some money in there for selectmen's expense to be able to do a couple things here and there. And everybody, as we do some of the other departments, office expenses up across the board. Inflation is driving that, really. Any questions on selectmen?
What was the decrease in salary?
There is the EDC person, was in the first selectman when Janice presented.
It's on account.
Trying to bury that lift kit so far. even
Yeah.
if they-
Shiny lights.
Is that a Corvette? Okay.
Treasurer salary is set by the Board of Finance. So obviously at this point, there's no change to it. That'll be during deliberations if the Board of Finance wants to change that.
That's an elected position. Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
Comptroller's office, yep, is up in 3 categories. Salaries, it's up more than 3%. We have 1 employee that's on steps. So obviously, the percentage list works, but we're not paying the person 100%. They're newer. Office expense is up again, like the first selectman's office. The last year's spend was $7,600. Our budget for this year is $6,500. We're asking for $7,500. We buy all the payroll checks, AP checks, all the W-2 stuff, 1099s, and that's on top of our normal office expense. That's why our office expense is a little bit higher. And it includes all the postage. We mail AP checks every week. So it look percentage wise, it's a big increase. 7,500 might not be quite enough, but the comptroller tried to tighten it up a little bit because he's a
My
chief.
boy.
Don't you have,
Actually,
direct deposit?
So not for AP checks. APs are vendors.
Yeah, AP is. the
So payroll checks we
commission.
hand out to people. Our purchasing agent goes around and walks.
That's so quaint.
Yeah.
It's cute. It's a small town.
Well, we have direct deposit available for some folks, but they get
Yeah.
the paper
Yeah.
piece.
Yeah.
And we're actually looking at the possibility of doing a bigger payroll system, but it's gonna be a while. We're working on it though.
Same.
And we used to be a department of 5, we are a department of 4. And that was done through attrition. The other piece is auditing's up 5%. I gotta finalize that number with them. I haven't asked them yet because it's a little early and we're trying to get our annual report done. So I earmarked 5%. I will tighten that up before we do deliberations with them. Part of me, the last couple of years, has been higher than that. So if I budget 5, I might just say, well, we budgeted 5. So that's where we're at with that. Questions on comptroller?
I don't think you should pay that auditor the whole amount. That's.
And just so the board knows, PUC, water and sewer departments pay a portion of the audit. So the audit actually costs more than what's in the comptroller budget. But the audit does include water and sewer, as well as all the other minor funds, but the bulk of it is the general fund. Legal professional services, we kept everything flat except for the legal fees. I did include on the second page here, by fiscal year, what we spent in legal fees. The 3-year average is $291,000. Last year we spent $379,000. There's a couple legal matters going on in the town that we are working on and fighting. So when I built the budget, my first draft of this budget called for the 290 to get to the 3-year average. I think the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance understand legal is kind of what it is, and we're going to monitor it throughout the year. 290 should be the number, but if you look at the last couple of fiscal years, you go 379 down to 204, then you have a 289, a 372, a 192. It jumps around. So trying to do right by the taxpayer, we went to 260 is my request at this point. We will monitor it if something pops and we need to come and ask the board for more money. We're going to be on top of it. But we're trying to balance the median, and the median, the 5-year average is 230.
Yeah, that's a
So-
little bit difficult to predict because you don't
Yeah.
really know what's gonna come.
Well, do you feel like just good outcomes or these lawsuits are coming to a finalization? Because if you thought you should budget 290, that's still 100 off of what we spent, 90 off of what we spent last year.
It's hard to say.
I mean, how did you get to that? Did you feel comfortable or the first selectman said, geez, I think this is working out?
I said, we could reduce this by $30,000, but goes in a mill rate calc, and we're gonna hope for the best, and if we need to come ask for more money, we will. But I'm trying to balance what we ask the taxpayers to pay for now. We have a healthy fund balance. That if we got in a pinch with legal, that there are mechanisms this board can do to fund it. So I'm trying to balance out
the unforeseen.
Yeah.
So it's also worth mentioning, there are a couple things we're not gonna have this year. Right?
Yeah.
That's what we don't have.
Yeah.
You have any-
But we also
I think
know,
that's what.
we also know there are some,
We're hoping.
you know,
Things
last year
wrapped up.
we had more FOI issues last year.
Yeah.
Last year we had, 3 contracts.
Yeah.
You know, so
Oh,
last year
right.
we had all these
So
other
that's
things,
legal fees.
right? But we do know there are some legal things on the horizon that we're kind of watching very carefully that we're in the middle of. So I do think, you know, legal fees is one of the things that stresses me out. And we've even talked about doing an RFP for different, you know, going to different firms and say, like trying to get set prices, maybe some lower prices with a couple of them. So we're trying to work on that number.
Yeah.
The best we can.
That's great.
So, but where my question is going, so that's still a 30,000 added to that line.
Correct.
If we had to find something in deliberations, if you're using the excuse of we could take it from the balance fund, because legal fees is a good example of asking for that ask. Can we ask for more if we had to?
Honestly, John, I took the 30 out before you guys did, because I'm trying to get.
Well, I didn't take it out.
I know,
I
but
mean,
I'm
I thought it was a
saying,
good idea because I got it highlighted here.
I'm sure he's gonna make a motion, so let's.
I want to also say something too, because now that I've come into this for a full cycle, one of the things that is very concerning sometimes is we chop things like this, that we go, all right, well, we know we got to pay it anyway, and it's just going to be there. But then we end up owing it and trying to clamor for it for somewhere else.
Well, but a 5-year average says, no, we might not need to, and you just got done saying we're out of contract season. and-
Right, but we have a lot of other things on the horizon to do this. So I'm just saying that 30,000 may be really tasty right now to look at.
No. I think he's saying we only put 30.
No. I'm thinking it might be a
Well,
number that we can get down to 260.
Right.
Yeah.
230.
Sorry.
yeah, so
You want to go to
Well,
230 is what you're saying.
I just
Yeah,
It's
we're
just a
not
question that
celebrating.
while he's,
That's the question he's asking.
Cynthia, did you have something to
Well,
add?
no, but the only thing, I didn't know if this is
You're
what I
right,
was
we are not
asking, but are there any things that are wrapping up? Like a win or a loss?
there's a big case going on right now in the town that could be really expensive, could not be really expensive, and we don't know. It's
Right,
with
but I
the
mean, do you
state,
have
it's,
multiple cases going on?
yeah, but
There's no union contracts right now. They're
correct, but the union
that-
contracts that are
Okay.
up 630, we can start negotiating 90 days in advance, so that we have,
Right,
and that's why in the contract negotiator last year, we spent 52, that's a separate line.
right.
I kept it at 20, even though we don't, but we have grievances, union grievances,
Sure.
we have all kinds of stuff. We're gonna spend, even if we don't have any contracts, probably at least 20 grand in the labor attorney.
Yeah.
So we try to track the labor separate so we can kind of have a handle of it.
I was talking more like just the unforeseen things, like something comes up, like, someone's suing the town for something or other, or something
Yeah.
with the,
If we didn't have any active cases, I'd go, you know what, let's see, but we're also trying to budget out 17 months.
yeah, I
Right.
understand. Just
So,
asking about
um,
specific
So,
results.
We're not deliberating now anyway, Brad, you could have a night off.
Yeah.
Save this for
I mean,
deliberations,
yeah.
that's when it'll come.
but I think one of the things when Dan and I went and talked about all the departments and where we were as a whole, we're trying to come in with a tight budget, but a reasonable of what the needs are. And really, I can make a really solid argument for the 290. And I did in my head when I put the first number in that 290. I'm also trying to be a good steward of the taxpayers' money and not tax people at a 290 budget if it could be 260. My guess is it's way more likely to be 260 up than 260 or down, John, to answer your question.
Yeah, and that's fair. Thank you for the explanation.
I didn't know he cut the 290 yet. I thought we were still 290, so.
Whose budget is this?
Right, we're gonna. Your budget.
The crazy probate court's up 21%. It's $1,300. It's shared with Reading, Ridgefield, and Newtown. Not Newtown. There's the
That was
first cut.
crazy too.
Reading, Ridgefield, and it is Newtown. Yeah. Reading got mad at me when I told him I increased our budget by 20%. He said I can't do it. I said it's Reading's piece is like $800. I'm like, okay.
Send it back.
Do what you want. I'm still gonna send you a bill at the end of the year. Any questions on probate? I didn't mean to skip ahead on that important one. IT, salaries, there's a new employee on steps. That's why that number is 1.5% on the salary line. There's a new ask in there for dues and education. Previously, some of the dues and education stuff might end up in office expense or contracted. We have 2 full-time staff in IT. And we want to educate them. So really, we want to, instead of spending an office expense or contracted services, we figured the head of IT, I don't know, the network administrator, I think is still technically his title, said to me, it'd be nice to actually have a line item in there. And I said, yes, it makes sense. Let's treat it like a lot of the other departments where we list out what dues and education are. So that's what that is. And then contracted services is up 2.5%. There's really 3 main things in there. One is MyRec, which is the software that Parks and Recreation uses to do all their programs. Previously that was in the Park and Rec budget, but as you see, in IT, we carry most of the software costs for all the other departments. It's kind of nice having them all so we can kind of look and go, do we have any duplication? Do we not? So that has been moved to IT for the 25 budget year. The other is a software program called Vialytics. Pretty much, Dan knows a lot more about it than I do, but it's what the software does is you drive it around town with, I think, mobile phones attached to it, right? And it grades all your roads.
Oh, Dylan's
So
gonna love that.
So at the end of the year or at the, when we use it, so we signed up for it. We had room in the 24 budget to do it for the first year. So we're putting it in as of right now for 25 because we're assuming it's going to be great and it's going to be very useful information. But that's a new request for this coming year. Offsetting some of that is budgeting software. We used to pay $20,000 a year for OpenGov. We left the line in there because we don't know what we're going to do in the future. For this current year, obviously, we're not using a budgeting software. At the end of the budget process, I'm going to ask for feedback to see what the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance want to do. But it's not something that we, at this point, we're not doing.
I think it was
So
a
we
food
removed
doggo, frankly.
And
Respectfully.
the cost of equipment, we took down $3,000 based on what we've been spending. And Tyler Technologies, which is our accounting software, and utility billing, but they pay their portion of it, it's up almost $3,000.
Brad, when's the last time we put something like the printers and copiers out to bid, or do we not put those out to bid?
The town side typically doesn't. We are the one that Tim Beeble used earlier that printed wrong, that leases up. We've used Base Technology in the past. I've reached out to get quotes from them and another company. Base is switching to a different model that now is covered on the state bid. So we're looking at that. If we can go off the state bid pricing, we won't, but typically ours is kind of hodgepodge. When the school does it, they do a 5-year bid on it. We have bought some machines, like I think the one in Public Works we own. I think the one in Planning and Zoning we own. This one's a lease, but this is our highest use one. We do have managed print service, so we should look at that. But that's also on a state bid that we can tag along with. So we're looking at it. It's kind of small what the town side does. But it's something that that Dan has changed the way that we're looking at all of our contracts and how we do them. In the past, some of them have been done by this department. It's all flowing through the first selectman's office and the town attorney now. So some of that stuff is getting cleaned up, and like our cleaning contract for cleaning the buildings, we went out to bid for this year, and we hadn't gone out to bid probably in 10 years on it. So we're looking at that stuff. We're cleaning up some of that stuff.
Right.
And what's the advantage, I guess, for a company, I understand depreciation and stuff like that, but for a municipality, like if you buy a big ticket item like a copier and it's got a 7-year, like there's no depreciation or anything that you do on your side, or is there?
No,
It
the
doesn't
auditors
matter, right?
on the books, they do it, but it doesn't really.
Yeah, it doesn't
Yeah.
help at all.
So,
Really, the only thing is which one's a better price.
Yeah, well, at least in the
Yeah.
environment.
Okay.
Town insurance. Kerma is our carrier. We've been our carrier for a while now. Workers' comp right now is the feedback we got for them. It's flat. In about a month before, some point between now and the public hearing, I will go back to them and say, by flat, you really meant down, which they did the last couple of years.
Just how many points?
But it's too soon to have that conversation with them. We just got the new rates 2 weeks ago. So it's a little too soon to go back to them and be like, you were wrong, right? You meant lower.
Right.
Property liability and insurance. We're in the final year of our 3-year contract with them. The max is 3%. Right now, they're saying 3%. Again, we'll have that conversation with them again. It just, like I said, 2 weeks after they gave us the price is not the time to go back and say, can you beat it?
Which seems reasonable.
Yeah.
Red on the property one.
Yeah.
PUC, pays separate property and liability on their.
It gets allocated. A portion of it gets allocated.
So out of this is.
It's all in the same like balloon, but they pay a portion of it. I think one pays 5%, one pays 7%, or maybe it's 5 and 3. I used to know those out of the top of my head. But... anything else on insurance? Brian told me I had to move quick, so we're gonna move along to 10:30, 10:40. Boards and commission, everything's flat. For the current year budget, we have $15,000 for the charter revision. I anticipate we'll use some of that, not all of that. That money does not carry over year, so we put in an additional 15,000 in for the following year. And I think initially when we talked about it last year, the last time we did a full one, when you escalate it, it costs about 20 grand. So usually it gets split between 2 fiscal years anyway. So at this point we kept it flat. So hopefully we get that running somewhat before June 30th, and then we'll finish it up in fiscal year 24-25. That's when it's flat. 10,390 employee benefits. The police pension and employee pension are both up. One's up 40,500. That's the police one. The employee pension is up $30,000. The police plan is an active plan, which means new hires are still on a pension. The town employees, any new hire is on a defined contribution program, so it's not a typical traditional pension, which will save the town money in the long run, but it actually costs more money in the short term because anybody on a DC, like a traditional 401k, you give them the money right away. It's not a legacy cost. It's, you pay it as you go. And just so you know, I did in the detail portion, and part of that employee pension line, prior year budget, $210,000 was for Board of Ed employees for their DC. And this year that's up $6,300. The other thing is it says town pension, but there are members of the Board of Ed that are in the town pension plan. So the town bears that full cost of the pension plan. It's not allocated to them in real dollars, they recorded on their state reporting. As far as hospitalization goes, the state is currently saying 3 to 5%. I budgeted 5% increase in the partnership plan. They're supposed to give a final number in March. So when we have a final number, hopefully it's the 3 and not the 5. If it is, we'll adjust.
And we have time to adjust before.
Yeah, and one of the other pieces in there is medical waivers. The prior year budget, we budgeted 20,000. Based on what we're actually paying out, the budget for next year is 42.5. Sounds like a big increase. Most plans, it's $3,000 the employee gets to not take insurance if they have a family. If they took insurance, it costs the town $25,000. So it's a good bad number. It's good because it does save the town money, but it is money out the door. And FICA right now, I have up 5%, based on some of the contracts that went out. We'll talk about that when we talk about the police department and dispatch. So it's up $45,000, which is 5%. Any questions on employee benefits?
Right, I'm sorry, just very quickly, the OPEB, I assume somewhere there is an accrual or a
Yes.
standing number.
Yeah, so on our annual report, there's a liability number. In past years, when we've had better years with employee benefits, we've taken some money and put it into the OPEB account. We haven't had that opportunity lately because the number gets tighter and tighter as health insurance costs have gone up. The state used to talk about 7%. Then they'd come down to 5 when we finalize the budget. And then by the time that they actually did the rates, it'd be like 2.5. So there'd be a little bit of room in there, and then we'd fund OPEB. We're not required to fund OPEB. So it's other post-employment benefits for anybody that doesn't know what OPEB stands for. And realistically, that account, when we've had an opportunity, is to fund the liability. Anybody that's retired from the town of Bethel that still has town insurance is in the hospitalization number. So we pay as we go what we're actually paying out. We're not drawing down on the OPEB account, mostly because it's way underfunded, but we've been paying as we go. But it does show as a liability on our financials.
Are there new participants in that plan?
So on the town side, it is no new hires for like the last 7 years can be in it. And I think the police is similar. I think the police have the opportunity to stay in it, but at 100% of the cost. So then there would be no liability for it. And well, there still could be a liability because they become a member of the pool. But in real kind of dollars, necessarily, there's not. Only in liability dollars, there's a risk. There's not necessarily a risk to the real dollars on that. But that is closed off on the town side. So most people don't have that. And to get insurance on retirement, you have to meet retirement age, which is the Rule 75. And the Rule 75 for anybody, it's your age plus how many years you worked has to be 75 or higher. So if you're 50 years old and you leave the town of Bethel, you have to have worked here for 25 years. And if you worked here for 24 years, you don't get that in retirement. And most of the unions pay an additional premium towards having that benefit. They had a chance to opt into it 20 years ago. So the people that opted into it pay 2.5% or 4.5% additional premium towards their insurance now.
I'm not sure I followed all that, but that's fine.
I'm sorry.
When the rating agencies.
Correct.
Start asking questions. So as long as we've kind of got our eye on that and understand that from the rating agency's perspective, it does decrease our fund balance.
Correct. Our ability to pay long-term, because it is a liability. Right. And it is a true liability. And when we talk to them, we do talk to them about, we fund the current needs through our operating budget. Obviously, it'd be nice if we had a ton of money in that account. And instead of doing it at our operating budget, we would just draw down on that for the retirees. But the problem is we'd have to fund that now. So it's, double-edged sword there of having to put, I don't know what the liability is offhand, but it's big.
Towns do set aside a separate.
Yeah.
trust.
And the money that we do have in those OPEB accounts are not currently in a trust. And if it was in a trust, you could only use them for those reasons. I think there are some ways that you can break them, but they're very hard to break a trust. So when Bob Kozlowski was comptroller, the decision was made to not put it in a trust so that we could use it for other things if something happened, because we've been paying as we go for it. And the retirees that are on it, some years it goes up, some years it goes down. But it is a closed plan in the sense that new hires are not eligible. Intergovernmental agencies. Heart Bus and Sweetheart, they sent requests for 3% increases in the funding year over year. I put the request in here. I think 1 year the Board of Finance said no and just kept them flat, and they didn't stop service to my knowledge. But we put in the request.
I hate
Memorial Day, we went from a budget of 4,000 to 7,500. The prior year spend was 7,200. We've been spending about that. It's the Memorial Day parade. It's all the flags. So this was for $3,500. I figured we should budget it correctly. Civic improvements is up $8,000. In the park and rec budget for the past, as long as I've been here, they give to the Cemetery Association a check for $5,000 so the Cemetery Association can maintain cemeteries that are no longer active in town. I think the biggest one is on South Street, correct, Dan? They came in last year with a request saying, this is costing us way more than that. They wanted 10. We said, here's your 5. But we did kind of tell them for the next fiscal year, we will put in a request for a higher number. We didn't go from 5 to 10. So right now the request that we're putting forth is $8,000. We understand that the cost of everything has gone up and we've kept it flat forever. And we also pulled it out of Park and Rec's budget because we kind of would get buried in there.
And what line did that come out of? Just so we can try to unwind that.
You'll see it in the detail of the Park and Rec.
So it's
It
clearly
does,
marked out, called out.
it is marked out. We have tried to list out as much detail as possible to show this.
Did it come out, where to go, right?
Yeah. And then obviously the big increase in here is the paramedic intercept. New Vance, so Danbury Hospital runs the paramedic intercept. Well, we run the paramedic intercept program through them. During COVID, they had large increases in losses. They greatly increased their rates for 23, 24 to try to make up those losses. The 450 is, I don't know what they're going to be looking for next year, but that's kind of trying to get them to where we're at for 23, 24. It is something that the first selectman has taken on to try to look at that program and how can we manage it. I know the chairman, you sat in a meeting, I think Mr. Manfreda, you were there too, that we're looking at how do we maintain the excellent service that we provide, but also manage the costs. So right now the request is 450 from 300. Anything else on intergovernmental?
I have a dumb question. So do we can, the fire part, do we donate to our own fire department?
Correct. The private houses. So they each have a company that's a private company. There is a donation to each one every year of $1,000.
It's been a ceremonial donation for years to do something for the fire company.
They're saving up for a fire truck.
Yeah.
Used to be 500. It got raised to
27.
1,000.
Yeah.
When was it? When did it get raised?
It was probably 4 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't long.
Okay.
Yeah.
410.
Utilities. The good news in utilities is the price of natural gas has come down. Last year we were locked in, well, through November 30th, we were locked in at $1.77 per therm. December 1, our lock-in price was $1.23 per therm. This budget calls for, we haven't locked in yet. We met with the gentleman yesterday. We're looking at $1 per therm, and that contract would start December 1. So that would cover 7 of the 12 months, but the heating season, really. We haven't locked in yet because we're hoping that number comes down more. The company that we use, they're monitoring it and to make sure we don't get popped. But we're having a warmer week. We're kind of through some of the biggest heating season once we get out a couple weeks from now. So the hope is we can lock in closer to 90 cents a therm. But right now, I wanted to go down to the dollar because I didn't want to show $1.23 because I was pretty confident that we'd get $1 or less. But until we get less than $1, I don't want to lower it from there.
I think what I'm hearing from you is you got about 200 coming back to us with all the different accounts.
$200, sure.
200,000.
I will not go on the record saying there's 200,000. $200, thank you.
But you might be able to adjust this line too.
Correct. If we get, yeah.
Nick, I counted 3.
Was it 3?
I think
I thought it was 240,
I
but it
think
might have
you
been
were
3.
being
I like
generous.
Brian's math.
I think you're being generous.
So gas is down, but electric is up.
Correct. Electric is up. We are locked in on our electric supply. We are locked in on electric supply through December of 2025. We signed a contract 3 years ago for a 5-year to lock in our price. Thank goodness we did because electric is through the roof.
What are you paying a kilowatt?
8.5.
8.5.
It's a supplier.
So it's delivery.
What's driving this up is
Oh, I know,
delivery.
it's delivery, it's ridiculous.
Its delivery is ridiculous. This number unfortunately would be much bigger if we weren't locked in on the supply side. I shudder to think when that contract is up. So when we're looking at the 26 budget, we're only locked in on electric supply for half that year.
You can still get it in the 12s right now.
Yeah, but that's a 50% increase.
I don't think it's in the 12s right now.
So the gentleman that does electric, that does natural gas, we were talking to yesterday, their company also does some electric. It's not the vendor we use for it. Somebody just locked in, a town locked in at 10.5 recently.
You use Titan?
We use Constellation. Titan does a lot with the state. Constellation does. One of the pieces we were talking about yesterday is the town with the lock-in that we did 3 years ago. A portion of it is green. Since then, the town has put in a lot of green. We have a solar farm. So Dan and I were talking about that yesterday. The price is still going to go up most likely when we renew, but I don't think we would buy some green energy at that point because one, the town of Bethel is doing green, and through everybody's electric bill, you are paying to fund green energy.
Oh, I'm so happy about that.
So
It's also worth noting, we're actually looking at a program too, where with some of our smaller accounts, we may be able to get green credit for giving other companies the ability to connect that to solar. Like, so instead of building another solar project in town, we can actually put those towards a solar project in another part of the state and we get the money back, 14 cents a kilowatt.
Yeah.
So that is something we're looking at everything we can to go to state green instead of just paying for it in our bill.
Right.
The other new line item in here is solar farm maintenance agreement. The way that the 3 units are in the school complex, so there's one on the field house, one on Rockwell, one on Johnson. The maintenance was covered for the first year. After that, you need to have a maintenance agreement on it. If they break and we don't have a maintenance agreement and we're down for 3 months, we lost money on the revenue side of it. So
How much is that generating revenue a year?
We always ask them.
Yeah, but then how much are we paying payments for the equipment?
Well, that's not, I just
Yeah, that's
want
where you're
to,
going.
well, not only the
Exactly.
equipment,
Maintenance.
maintenance is 7,500 a year.
Yeah.
I think part of the issue is it's convoluted a little bit because it's a REX program.
yeah, so the solar farm is crazy complicated. The ones on top of the building.
By design.
Yeah. So I could just tell you what we budgeted for revenue on it.
Well, you think it was last year's actual
Yeah.
revenue, can't you?
Yeah, I have the 23 actual too.
Yeah, that'd be good.
The 23 actual, we got solar credits of $87,000.
So multiply 7,500 times 12 for our maintenance agreement.
No,
Not a
it's
mathematician. 75.
That's
Oh, it's 7,500
That's for
a
the
year.
covers.
But if you look in here, solar farm payments
Yeah.
is 101,000.
Yeah.
So we're losing money on it.
But one of the reasons that we have a maintenance agreement on it is the one on Rockwell School was down and we didn't know about it because it didn't go to anybody.
But I mean, the fact is, we're still losing about 11K a year on the solar.
can't
field.
even Field talk good. That's all it
is.
Yeah, but there's
11,000 acres
also,
you're losing.
I'm gonna,
you also get some net metering on the building. It is so complicated the way they do solar, and it's probably by
by
design.
design.
One of the things that the state or the feds or whoever regulates, I think it's the state, now will let you rent out a roof and somebody will make
Oh
rent
my
payments to you.
God.
To me, even if it's less money, I'd rather, because it's consistent money. This net metering is
And
messy.
it's a real number, whatever
Yeah.
they decide.
Correct.
Right.
And we get set up on, you get capped on how many kilowatt hours you can generate. And they only pay on whatever the agreement says at the time. And typically we've been below it. Last year we went over it. It's, yeah.
I don't want to beat this up, but.
I
mean,
do.
Well,
I'll take it.
let's go past the solar farm, shall we? The Amoresco, we're still paying that off at 290,000 a year.
Yeah.
And these payments continue all the
Yep.
way to 2031.
That was the
Yep.
best deal ever.
That's the $4.5 million project that was done.
And we're supposed to make $500,000 a year, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that was just going to
Yeah.
LEDs.
It was LEDs, they
Yes.
put in HVAC stuff, they did toilets, they did,
Yeah, all kinds of things. Like,
yeah. But now you gotta pay for it for the next 15 years. And in theory, maybe our electric line is $1.5 million if we don't have it. But good luck trying to figure out how much money you saved on the new urinals they put in the men's room. How much money you saved because
Yeah.
they replaced a boiler unit,
you'll never know.
Yeah. It was supposed to be guaranteed savings, but then we also had to put in a ton of management issues behind it. And those have to be managed by staff now. The maintenance foreman has a laptop that he can monitor every building in town with the temperature set at. He
It's
can
put
adjust
up
the
a
front.
boiler.
Yeah.
I remember,
I mean,
I remember every segment of that project because I was just,
I mean, we're still on the hook for
Gobsmacked.
almost 2.4 million. on that.
Jesus.
unbelievable.
And then take the losses on your solar farm, which when you look at the
Hey.
roof thing.
Okay.
All
Well,
right,
Such a bad-
I'm already depressed enough.
A
Let's
bad
go.
memory for me.
We can get Megan back in here if you want. Bring it right down.
You have 4 minutes, Brett.
All right. Oh, jeez.
We're
Miscellaneous,
just glad we were talking about Nebraska.
10-420, miscellaneous charges and transfers. It's down $233,000. So that is all, we don't have any contracts. That's non-union and elected official salaries increases that are set by the Board of Finance and for Selectmen. So that's what, now it's 95,400. That's what makes that up. And then we went up in town hall expense by $2,500 because we actually spent 47,000 last year and I went to $45,000 because Dan and I are cheap and we're not gonna try to spend $47,000.
I like it.
And I'm on the record saying it might be $47,000 this year, but we're gonna do our best. We try, I will say that building this budget and it can burn us when things go bad and we're gonna be better about communicating with the boards on what's trending poorly. This is a tight budget. The stuff that we can be as tight as possible on, we try to be as tight as possible on. And we try to budget as close to what the average is or what we anticipate as possible. I budgeted, going back to utilities for a second, 285,000 therms for natural gas. Last year we did 278,000. The year before that we did like 270. The year before that we did 312. 285 is kind of what we hope the year is, and we hope we use a lot less. You get a really cold winter next year, we're gonna do more than 285,000 therms. Hopefully, like we don't.
I hate that word, hopefully.
It's the hope that kills you, right? That's it.
That's the last thing to die.
By 10.
Any question on miscellaneous charges and services?
Word of hope.
All right, debt service. A couple years ago, I came up with a 7-year debt service plan to use our debt service fund. Initially, the starting balance in there was $3.7 million, of which before I became comptroller, 200,000 we knew we were going to use for short-term debt interest. I think it was short-term debt. It was the last of the short-term debt for the interest on it. So we were really dealing with $3.6 million. The first year we used $1.3 million to not have debt service balloon up to $7.8 million. We were able to budget it at $5.5 million. The next year we used 651. The initial plan at that time was to spend 518 from this year budget. I have adjusted the plan to bump that up to 618. We have a healthy fund balance. I know they're looking for fire trucks. I know we still don't know about the Board of Ed HVAC. The initial 7-year plan left $600,000 in this fund at the end in case we took on new debt. My hope again, my plan is that the town doesn't incur any more debt and we can be able to pay for things with fund balance. So my thinking is, let's take 100,000 of that and give the taxpayer a break in 24, 25 if we can. 100,000 doesn't move the mill rate very much, but it's something. And it still leaves us with $518,000. And I think a year from now, we're going to be saying we don't have anything on the horizon. Let's take another 100,000 out of it and get that number as close to zero at the end of the 7-year plan as possible. And we'll keep driving our debt down, because if we have a healthy fund balance, we should use it before we put stuff on the credit. So
There's no credit card. Bob chopped it up.
Yeah, you took the credit card, right?
Yeah, he took our credit, he cut
So-
right in half.
So debt service is down $157,000 overall. Our actual payments are down 200,000 or so. But because we've been using the debt service fund, we've been, managing it down. So, so that's debt service, and it's 10:01. I'm sorry.
Oh, wow. Excellent.
Any questions on
Richie still
that?
with us? Richie
I
still
mean,
with us? I know
guess-
Eric's gonna click.
I guess it's more a board
Oh, yeah.
of finance issue, but, I have a hard time believing in the next 5 years, there's not gonna be a bonding request or something that we're gonna be facing, and that, gives me just a little cause for concern, but we've discussed this in the past.
We're managing it right now.
Yeah, but every year we get out or closer to that.
To the end there, you see how it drops off.
And you really have to think about when the debt would come on. So if 3 years from now, we approve whatever, $10 million community center.
That's really cool, Brad.
Yeah.
Brad, are you moving to town or something we don't know?
Yeah, right. Or a new
By the
school.
time it's built and you start paying the debt on it, it could be out further.
We have
All right.
roofs.
And we have debt naturally expiring anyway.
I understand. All right, I'll leave you alone.
Any questions from your side? I think we're good. I think we're sufficiently beat down.
I'm brain dead right now. I'm good.
Well, Bob, you have one last question for us?
He looks mischievous.
Bob, wait for deliberations before you drop the item.
As far as the Board of Selectmen is concerned, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I
Someone wanna
think
make
we-
a motion?
I make that motion.
We have a second.
Aye. Okay, then we stand adjourned.
Oh, my God.
All in favor, thank you guys. Thank you.
Brad,
Tonight was a big night, we needed to push through this a little.